Start of this meeting. It's just past 2 o'clock and welcome to the Cabinet. Item 1 on the agenda is apologies. Are there any apologies? I think everybody's here that is on the Cabinet. Item 2, notification of requests from members of the public. I've got 21 requests for members of the public to speak. You'll each get, as you know, up to 3 minutes. Doesn't mean you have to take 3 minutes, but not more than. And of course, I'd ask you to avoid repetition in what you say compared with other people supporting your particular point. The people I have... Well, I can't do much about that other than I'll try and speak up and you listen up. The speakers are... How about crikey? That's a bit echoey. How about that? Are you sure you want to hear me to this volume? Okay. The speakers I have on item 7 are Professor Pope, Rosie Newbigging and Jonah Roy, Kalsuma Begum, Jane Carr, Jonas Deere, Graham Marshall, John Rayner, Colin Britcher, Marion Turner-Hawes, Adrian Whitehead, Marcia Walker and Ron Mendel. On item 11, oh yes, and Justin Brown and Bianca Todd, that's on item 7. On item 11, they previously asked for item 7, but I think it's right and sensible that you actually come in on item 11, so I'm happy to agree that. We've got Gary Mitchell, Dave Schofield, Colin Wells, Ben Muddle, Christopher Hunt and Jamie Law. And then on item 9, again, Mr. Whitehead. So I'll try and remember those to come along, and if I miss, please prompt me. Item 3, minutes of the last meeting. Can I sign these as a true record? Thank you. Item 4, declarations of interest that aren't already covered on the main form. Item 5, announcements. No special announcements other than, as usual, members of the public are reminded that feedback forms are available near the exit and the fire drill is not due to take place, but if the fire alarm bell does sound continuously, there will be an announcement made and people should leave the building by the nearest exit and disperse for about 20 minutes. Moving on then to items requiring decisions. We have item 6, the scrutiny review of the draft council budget. Invite Councillor Hakewell to present the review. Yeah, we did consider that. Decision was made it was best and fairest to have the people that want to speak in here and the rest will be relayed down to room 15. Thank you. Councillor Hakewell.
Thank you, Leader, for the opportunity to present this overview. Firstly, to our colleagues in Democratic Services who divided their time up to organise and run the scrutiny meetings and subsequently produce the report before you. They are often unsung heroes of our democratic process, and I would like to record my appreciation and that of the committee for all the support we got. We were given, Leader, through the scrutiny process, access to all senior colleagues that we asked for, both political and managerial, who came and gave their time to make sure that the questions we had were answered. The County Council is bestowed with top-class professionals who convert our fiscal budget into the services that the people and businesses of our county expect. I would like to thank them for their openness and honesty in highlighting the pressures on budgets and the likelihood of delivery of whole or in part of those budgets. Thank you to the Cabinet members who both came and spoke as well as sat in the background on occasion and listened to our scrutiny process. It's appreciated by all councillors when you do that. We were also pleased, Leader, to welcome a number of our partners to assist our understanding, and perhaps more than ever in the past. Just to make note of those, Joe Lappin of Northamptonshire Enterprise Partnership, Vanessa Kelly and Brendan Coleman of the Northamptonshire Waste Partnership, Fiona Seymour, the MD of Olympus Care Services, Tasmin Hooton of Corby CCG, and Jonah Roy of NREC, and Rudy Imhoff of Nourish, along with a number of members of the public. So I think the scrutiny had a good cross-section of people coming to it. Partnership Working Leader will become even more crucial in the future, and a continuous theme was that we have one set of customers in the county, and they don't mind who delivers publicly funded services, as long as those services are delivered. So partnership working is the key. Many councillors who I see here today who are not members of the Cabinet also attended and spoke, whether or not they were members of the committee. I'd like to thank those councillors for coming along and making scrutiny very worthwhile, sharing their thoughts and ideas. Leader, what can I say about Councillor Larratt? Can't catch his eye at the moment. But I'd simply like to express my appreciation for his chairmanship of the subcommittee and his attendance at every one of the meetings, of which there were many during January. I and the committee thank him for his incisive questioning and firm but fair chairmanship style, I should say, tinged with occasional humour. So thank you, Councillor Larratt. I can't even see him. He was here earlier. There he is, humbly sitting over there. But thank you, Phil, for all your time and dedication to the process. Leader, I could go through the report before you, page by page, 43 items, but I sense that's not desirable. The report is available through the normal channels, and it's publicised on the website, and I know there are copies of it here. So I'll just pick out 3 items, quickly, that I'd like to address. Adult social care in the county is identified and has been for some time as a real pressure point in the budget that we presented this year as well. It's pleasing that that area has had some additional funding since the scrutiny process took place. Savings on waste recycling credits is seen as a difficult ask, particularly as the goodwill and understanding of the boroughs and districts will be crucial in delivery of this partnership saving. It's understood that work has been going on in the background in order to establish how much and what sort of shape of those waste partnership savings will be. That, we thought, was a big ask for this year. And the third item, Leader, is that the Council Plan was an integral part of the scrutiny and consultation process. The draft visioning document stimulated a request for the Chief Executive to present the plan's aspirations to the committee, and we thank Paul Blanton for that opportunity. We were keen to have a significant input from the scrutiny committees into the development of the draft into its final plans. It was suggested that the Scrutiny Management Committee could be tasked with establishing a framework for meetings to take place in order to harvest the ideas and the experiences of councillors, all councillors, colleagues, as the vision is delivered. It was appreciated that the Council Plan is more about future years' delivery than it is about the scrutiny of this forthcoming year's budget. I'm pleased to present the report on behalf of the committee, who came to a consensus on the findings. And I do say consensus because, of course, views differ in relation to the acceptability of the investments or savings and political ideology. Scrutiny is about shining a light on the budget and enabling an informed budget debate today and at full council based on the best availability of the facts and good knowledge. So, Leader, scrutiny is alive and well in the County Council, and I'm very happy to present this report to you in the Cabinet for your deliberations in the afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I've got one speaker on this item, Councillor Scott. If you'd like to come up to me. I will take your contribution this time, if that's okay. No? Okay. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to get up really to say that I think the scrutiny process this year was better than any other year I've attended scrutiny, and I've been attending it since 2007-8. It seemed to be a lot more open in most parts to that which had occurred before. It was certainly well chaired, and I'd like to thank the chair for that, for the chair's acceptance of all the various views that were put forward and arguments that were put forward. As Councillor Hakewell said, it was a scrutiny of the financial figures and the means by which those could be achieved or not, as the case may be, and not about the political aspects, which no doubt we'll be debating next week. And as such, of course, I don't agree at all precisely with all the wording, but the general tenor is certainly there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Loss, did you want to say a word? Can I just explain? What I'm going to do, I'm going to invite people from the floor to contribute and indicate they want to speak as the presentation takes place. I'll then announce how many I've got and who I've got, and we'll go from there. But this time, Councillor Loss.
Thank you, Chair. There's a couple of very quick ones.
No, sorry, he has to go down, else it doesn't get recorded.
Sorry?
Has to go down, else it doesn't get recorded.
Oh yes, no, you have to come down here. Beg your pardon. I thought you knew that.
Thank you, Chair. And it was just a couple of points around the proposed Cabinet responses to the report. And the two areas that I was just querying was under the Empowering Councillors Fund. You've accepted that the amount of each individual fund available to the councillors will remain the same, but you've retained the budget reduction. And at the same time, you're saying that unspent money cannot be carried forward. I'm not quite clear how you will bridge the gap when councillors discover that they have to spend the full amount during the year, because at the end of the year, there won't be any unspent budget. And I'm quite certain that all councillors will make sure that they do spend the £7,000, which will leave the council with a £100,000 shortfall. And there's no clarity about how that would be bridged. The other query I've got on the Cabinet response is on the draft council plan, where you note the comments made by scrutiny around the lack of any financial detail in the plan, but you're now saying that the revised version contains sufficient detail. That's actually contrary to the Section 151 officer report, which specifically states that there is a total lack of any financial analysis within the revised plan. So I'm not quite sure why you feel that you can go against the Section 151 officer report by saying that the plan is now ready for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank Councillor Hakewell and his team for their hard work and for the forensic way in which various issues have been looked at and examined during the period of scrutiny. Could I respond to the comments he made regarding items 3 to 6 on page 1 of the recommendations, and that concerns my portfolio and the savings from the budget of £7 million. I think it would be fair to say that Cabinet's well aware of the challenges of achieving these savings, but it underlines the importance of close collaboration between the districts and the boroughs, and I'm pleased to say that this has increased considerably over the past 6 months and looks like continuing in the future. There have been more frequent meetings between the officers of the 7 boroughs with the officers from the County Council, looking for common ground, making progress. And I can report meetings between the group, the leaders of the boroughs and districts, with myself and officers from the county over the budget period. The options which we're talking about include a number of blue sky areas which are attainable, provided there is goodwill and provided there is the cooperation I've referred to. These include things like looking at the future of ownership and title of the recycling centres. We've had interest expressed at County Hall on the part of third parties actually thinking of taking over or making offers to the county to take on ownership of the recycling centre. So that world is about to change, or could well change. We're looking at the synchronisation of collection contracts amongst the boroughs and districts. There are 7 different contracts, so a huge amount of money could be saved by that. And we're looking at the treatment of residual waste through gasification plants, creating a revenue stream out of what is a cost. So there's a lot of work which has been done, which has not really seen the light of day yet, but it is all contributing to a massive effort towards achieving this target, which we regard as realistic and realisable. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parker, to respond.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you to Councillor Hakewell for his comprehensive report. I agree that I think the scrutiny process this year has been excellent, and it's been well controlled. Clearly there are differences of opinion with some of the schemes that have been discussed, but in the main I think it's been a very good process, and I will respond to some of the queries that have been and concerns that have been raised when I do the next report, Mr. Chairman.
Agree the report? Item 7 then. Now we have some of our speakers, 15 of the speakers. The first one is Professor Pope. Whether we could organise the sequence a little bit would be helpful, I think. So it's Professor Pope, Rosie Newbigging and Jonah Roy and Councillor Begum.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Cabinet, for this opportunity to speak to you. First of all, if I declare an interest, or a collection of interests, of which some of you will be aware, I'm Chairman of Health Watch Northamptonshire. That's a community interest company, so a social enterprise, third sector, one could say, owned by the University and Voluntary Impact Northamptonshire, and actually working under contract to the county. I've also just retired as Chair of Unity Leisure Services, which is a charity, so company limited by guarantee, no shareholders, again, third sector, but which operates the Northampton Borough Council's leisure centres, Daintree Leisure Centre, Western Favell, the Mounts, Baths, with which you'll be familiar. So I'm familiar with this sector, and I'm only going to make 3 points, and not, Chair, I hope, take the full 3 minutes that you implored. You can see from my history, if you like, that I understand the concept of change, and I'm not against the concept of change at all. But what I would do is to implore you, for my first point, is that when you're making change, to consider that the change is hugely aspirational. It's got to be aspirational to the highest standards, and we mustn't aim at mediocrity. We want good and sensible change which gives great services for the people of Northamptonshire and which gives great outcomes for the people of the county too. And I'm sure you do as well, but I want to emphasise that point. My second point, though, is around the change that will happen within, shall I call it the residual, in these proposals, within the residual county council. The county has got to be a great commissioner. It's got to be a great commissioner and a great contract manager. Now, are you absolutely sure, I ask yourself, thank you, are you absolutely sure that you are going to be great commissioners and great contract managers? And can you provide the assurance that you will be? And my final point is around the compact that's national government backed between the voluntary sector and local authorities. Now, the compact in Northamptonshire has in the past been dysfunctional, and this has damaged the voluntary sector. So again, I implore you to look at the compact, get it working, and provide the assurance that that compact will work. Mr. Chair, that's me done.
Thank you very much. Rosie Newbiggin.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon. I want to concentrate my comments on the impact of the proposed budget for next year on adult social care. In our submission during the limited consultation period on the budget, Healthwatch Northamptonshire has spoken to organisations representing users of social care and also carer organisations. And I think a central concern of ours has really been the absence of detailed information to enable us to really understand the full impact of the savings. And I look forward to reading in detail the scrutiny report, which I think has been published today. But I would say that the absence of full equality impact assessments on significant saving areas, including £3 million from the transformation of adult social care, £3 million savings in contract negotiations spread across Olympus Care and Shaw, and £4 million from a review of the market for social care provision, and those are just some examples. There's just a line in Appendix C on the budget savings. It has been really difficult to take an informed response to the budget proposals, and it's really essential that service users and carers are able to make that quality of response. Now, I don't think I need to tell anybody in this chamber, but I will, that adult social care is really under absolutely intense pressure at the moment. And Age UK recently published figures showing that social care funding has fallen over the last 4 years nationally by £1.1 billion. Home care, daycare, Meals on Wheels, aids and adaptations have all been reduced during a time period when we know that the numbers of elderly and frail people in our communities are increasing. And we know that the consequence of this is that older people are left to battle on, or when that breaks down, it's an emergency A&E attendance or a hospital admission with both the human and financial costs. And just to give you an example which I think highlights this, very recently at Healthwatch we took a call from a member of the public. Her father-in-law had been admitted to one of the local hospitals, but she'd been advised by adult social care that even though her father-in-law was medically fit to be discharged and to return home, it would take several weeks to arrange a care package. And in the meantime, this gentleman is losing his mobility, he's not eating properly. So, Chairman, we very much welcome the submission of the Better Care Fund, the move towards integration, but we really do need a full, open debate about the impact of reductions on social care. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Joan Roy.
Chair, councillors, members of the public, I'm Gina Roy from Northamptonshire Rights and Equality Council. Hopefully being, if nothing else, consistent in my submissions to the council on this particular budget. A few years ago, the council commissioned through a tender process the investment of £61,000 into developing a consultation and engagement board specifically designed to improve the engagement of people with protected characteristics in budget decisions. This was a point in time where the council removed its relationship from our organisation on the grounds that they were going to invest in this. But before you, you have today an equalities paper which has very, very, very little in it in terms of people with protected characteristics engaging with your budget and identifying what actual mitigations they need to actually make it real. Repeatedly, and I've been to scrutiny, members will remember that in your initial scrutiny meeting and subsequent ones that I attended, I'd asked for a cumulative impact assessment, particularly on the plan around the transformation of the county council. And looking at the scrutiny report, there still doesn't seem to be any. You've got these really, really radical changes to council, the way the council operates. It's absolutely transformational. So why not engage with people so that you take us with you in the transformation around that? When you're publishing papers, like literally 24 hours in advance, saying that actually you're going to set up things that there's no clarity for.
1 minute, go.
Like the rest of the East Midlands, the Northamptonshire voluntary and community sector is very focused around health and social care to make massive decisions around investing in new bodies which are with organisations that traditionally have not involved your voluntary and community sector means the death of those organisations. Think very carefully about what you're going to do, and what I would say is there must be an alternative.
Thank you. Councillor Bingham.
Good afternoon, councillors and members of the public. My name is Kalsuma Begum. I'm speaking on behalf of the committee, staff and service users of Dostio Asian Women and Girls Organisation. We are all concerned about the proposals in the budget and the implications it has on our services. We provide services for extremely vulnerable members of the community. I would like to give you an example of our support services. We have been providing ongoing support to a young woman suffering with depression and anxiety. Her husband had suffered from a major stroke and their lives were turned upside down. They had 2 young children and she had been very dependent on her husband as he was the sole breadwinner. She was now his main carer and their roles had been reversed in a way. She approached us for help in regards to making the relevant benefit claims. We also liaised with the local authority in regards to suitable housing, and the family have managed to move to a more suitable adapted property. Her husband has a formal care package in place, and this gives her a much-needed break from the caring responsibilities. She is attending our in-house ESOL class and regularly volunteers at our Wellbeing Cafe. This has given her the opportunity to make friends and increased her self-confidence. She now feels empowered and has become more independent. Her mental health is also more stable. She is optimistic about the future and feels more in control of her life. We are extremely worried about the cuts and the impact this will have. The plans to create organisations to commission services are of particular concern. For marginalised communities like the ones we serve, if there are problems with commissioning decisions or contract management, the democratic deficit can mean the difference between life and death. We have been involved for many months in setting up consortia on the request of the Council as part of the community wellbeing tender. Despite direct communication with the Council about the future investment in our organisation, we have no assurance on the length and the level of funding. We have the paper on item 18, which proposes to set up the CIC with the university and NHFT. We have no idea where this leaves our services. We need an alternative to the plans published here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Jane Carr.
Thank you. Good afternoon. For those who don't know me, I'm Jane Carr, I'm the Chief Executive of Voluntary Impact, and I've been asked to come here by a number of the local VCS organisations just to speak some information on their behalf. Firstly, I wanted to highlight the paper that came out last minute, I think it's over the last couple of days, around the improving health and wellbeing in Northamptonshire through the wellbeing community. The paper was released at very short notice, giving an outline and after the consultation period, which made it very, very difficult for the sector to respond appropriately to some of the information in that, particularly because it's an area that the sector is very entrenched in. We welcome the previous process, tendering process, which was inclusive of VCS and allowed us to get involved with varying different partners in the different districts. There is no clear commitment in that new paper as to how that would happen, and the contract was previously awarded in certain areas, particularly in Wellingborough, to a VCS model which actually scored higher than the model that's being proposed. So I think really what we were saying to you is where is that Support Wellingborough model going to be included in this full picture, and how did you choose the partners that were going to be in that CIC, and is there more work that needs to be done around that? I fully understand this model is health related and developed through a well thought out health perspective. Your own research shows that between 45 to 57% of what determines a person's health is social and economic. So not to include the VCS and districts potentially misses essential support in key areas such as jobs, housing, isolation and finances. the catch-all statement with other partners, but it doesn't give a clear commitment to how the VCS will be included and how communities will be included. With regards to the main plan, the draft plan basically proposes that the VCS is to the side of the federated model. Our recommendations to you would be that this is reconsidered and actually the VCS is included in the main model in some way, shape or form. We would advocate a model that adds the value to the work that the mutuals are going to do and ensures that as communities we are joining up to support in the right way and that priorities are shared and spread amongst everything that's done. Okay.
Thank you very much. Joanna Steer's not here. Okay, so the next is Graham Marshall.
Good afternoon, councillors and members of the public. My name is Graham Marshall and I am the Operations Director for the Teamwork Trust in Northamptonshire. The Teamwork Trust is a registered charity and established social enterprise, delivering a wide range of programmes for our members who are vulnerable adults within the community of Northamptonshire with short-term or enduring mental health issues, learning difficulties, physical disabilities, and we're based in the north of the county in 3 purpose-built premises at Corby, Kettering and Wellingborough. I wish to address this Cabinet meeting as an advocate for the vulnerable adults who access services funded by Northamptonshire County Council. I wish to raise the increase in financial demands placed upon vulnerable adult service users by the Monitoring and Payments Team at Northamptonshire County Council. Demands for substantial increases in personal contributions for the care received, including numerous full cost recovery demands, are placing service users, their parents and carers under severe financial pressures. The Department of Health fairer charging policy clearly states that councils need to take care to ensure that any charging policy is reasonable, demonstrably fair, and that the overall objective of social care is to, and I quote, promote the independence and social inclusion of service users and not to undermine by poorly designed charging policies. As a direct result of the NCC charging policy, parents and carers have stated that they will remove their service user members from the placements and inform the NCC they no longer wish any financial support from them. This is an understandable response, however the implications for the service user and member are very, very concerning. The current NCC policy in respect of personal contributions, including the demand for full cost recovery, is resulting in the service user experiencing the exact opposite. Their independence, social inclusion and well-being will deteriorate. In many cases, accessing NCC funded services is the only form of social inclusion vulnerable adults experience. The Department of Health fairer charging policy states users' income should not be reduced below the levels of income support. The NCC currently places this at £97.73 per week, plus the 25% buffer that the Department of Health state should be included. This amounts to £130.31. I'll give you a quick couple of examples. One person I know of, their total income is £238.25. After all the allowances that the County Council allow them, that leaves them £48.90 per week. The weekly amount payable demanded by the Northamptonshire County Council for their care is £48.90. So effectively a full cost recovery leaves them with nothing after the £130.31 that this council seem to think people can live on.
Draw to a close now, please.
Certainly. That was just one example. I had planned to give you 3, but basically the question I asked this council, is it the policy, and it continue to be the policy of the NCC, to target the most vulnerable of the vulnerable within the county of Northamptonshire to address the shortfall in the health and social care budget? Thank you very much.
Thank you. John Rayner.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Cabinet. Thank you for the opportunity to allow me to come and address you this afternoon on behalf of the Northamptonshire Registered Care Homes Association. Everyone knows that there is a serious crisis in the provision of elderly care, due mainly to the lack of funding, but made worse, of course, in this period of austerity. That notwithstanding, the smaller family-run or owned care homes in the county have been under enormous pressure to survive. Using the Freedom of Information tool, we have established on the Care Quality Commission that 13 homes closed in 2013, and 14 more homes have closed in the county from January to October last year. I don't have any more up-to-date information than that. These homes that have gone were reliant in the main upon local authority placements, but now that capacity has been irretrievably lost at a time of increased demand for care. The over 65 projection to 2021 is about 25% increase on what we now have by way of population. And in Northampton alone, about a third of placements at the present time are local authority funded. The corporates continue to build and provide markets for their own fee rates. They exclude local authority placements, and some corporates will not accept local authority placements as a matter of policy. And this may be a portent for things to come. The differential between the local authority rates for residential care and fair charges set by homes means that the much disliked top-ups by families simply cannot make up the difference. This, of course, risks disenfranchising the most vulnerable in our society. Sometimes a lower negotiated fee can be agreed, but children of residents these days are invariably pensioners themselves, so ultimately depressed fee levels lead to lower quality of care, particularly at a time when the CQC has raised the bar, which they have done recently. Press reports suggest that 1 in 5 homes across the country failed upon inspection in at least one area. The excellent policy of encouraging the elderly to remain in our homes has delayed, in their own homes, has delayed admission into institutional care, but the trade-off has been that people now coming into care homes have higher needs, and that, of course, impacts upon staffing costs. I'd ask the Cabinet to take on board some of the other factors when deliberating the budget. The emerging pension commitment, which the homes are going to have to take on board at 3% of the wage. The PricewaterhouseCoopers report recommendation some 2 years ago for a fair cost of care, that remains outstanding. Mandatory above inflation increases in the national minimum wage.
Shall I ask you to draw to a close now,
Thank you.
please?
Recent problems in nurse recruitment, which evidenced by the closure or impending closure of Brackley Cottage Hospital, are spilling over into the care home sector as close to full employment is reached, and staff retention in care homes is a critical area but is now becoming unaffordable.
Thank you very much. Mr. Britcher.
Good afternoon. Value for people, not value for money. Yes, you've heard it before. We need policies for people. People before profits. Last year it struck home how little you cared. I tossed in a reference to an agenda to reduce or even cull the population. People will die as a result of cuts. There was a recent exhibition in Guildhall Street when one exhibition enumerated the number of people who had committed suicide as a result of cuts. I had expected some protestation. For instance, that you would have liked to provide services if funding was there. However, it is clear to me that you do not care. You need to prioritise people, not projects. With the restrictions in government funding and regulation, it is even more important. Yet, every time you cut services to people, you are asking turkeys to vote for Christmas. How long before they stop voting for it and gobble you up? Building new offices while you are cutting staff. The reopening of Abingdon Street is a borough project, but how much does NCC put towards that? Money wasted on projects that could have been spent on people. But you put the plug on the North West bypass, which has a clear value and had been agreed. And yet when you ask to do your bit by taking a 10% cut, you give yourself a pay rise. Who benefits most from the lowest council tax in the country? Rich people like yourselves. Perhaps that's why you want a county-wide unitary. It might be financially efficient, but will it actually serve those of us who pay council tax? The Liberal Democrats may not have done their homework to produce proper costings on savings by having unitaries, but that does not mean we should not create 3 or more unity authorities. And I've written and spoken on this on many occasions. Kingscliff to King's Sutton sounds poetic, but the east, the centre and the west of the county have different agendas. We are served by 4, yes, that's 4 rail lines to London. There's Peterborough and Oxford lines. Each authority can concentrate on its own needs and be in touch with its own electorate. No more problems with different authorities failing to talk to each other. which happens. This makes for efficient administration, as it knows where to put its resources. A county unity administration is out of touch. It might spend less money, but it will actually do little. The budget papers did not come to this morning. You struggled to produce figures. There is little time to go through with a tooth comb. But
you draw to a conclusion
now, work
please. Because
your philosophy is all wrong. Thank you again for your time in listening.
Thank you. Marion Turner-Hawes.
Good afternoon. My name is Marion Turner-Hawes, and I am the Green Party prospective parliamentary candidate for Wellingborough and Rusden. I'm also a director of a disabled person-run business in Wellingborough. I find your proposals shocking, and I totally oppose the proposed cuts that you suggest. I am concerned that further cutting spending on adult social care and increasing charges, that with those, many more vulnerable people will be thrown into even deeper hardship. Even before you review your charges, I am aware of older and disabled residents in Wellingborough who had their charges increased before Christmas. One elderly lady saw her daycare costs double, and another saw her charges quadruple. The council should not be making the most vulnerable carry the burden of these cuts. I oppose the wholesale privatisation, effectively, of the remaining council functions. Whilst I understand the council has little control over the government's funding reductions, the direction in which you are going is making this situation so much worse. And to say there is no alternative is simply not true. In these trying times, you need to ensure all funds that we do have are used well. Do not waste them creating business entities of dubious viability for which you have presented no demonstrable business case, and particularly where a well-functioning voluntary and private sector already exists and is doing such a good job. Support Wellingborough and other community ventures like Glamis Hall show that people and communities do take seriously the challenges of austerity and can be trusted to respond with positive and constructive action. However, rather than bolstering these approaches, your plans are undermining them and risk decimating the voluntary sector. Perhaps you can learn from the experience of Wellingborough Council over Glamis Hall and acknowledge that we, the residents of Northamptonshire, need to be involved in sharing the challenges and creating the solutions. When people and communities lead, miracles can happen. You only need to hear the delight of the 120 older people still getting a service at Glamis Hall to know this to be true. So my appeal to you is please pause, pull back from these plans, take time to look around and consider your options. Open doors and your minds to us, the public of Northamptonshire, and work with us to craft a new way of meeting our needs through true public and community partnership. And if you get behind us, we can achieve amazing things. Thank you.
Thank you. Adrian Whitehead.
Thank you for your time, councillors and members of the public. I trust that some of the councillors will pay a bit more attention than sniggering at me like he did to the last but one speaker, which I think as a member of the public is rather disingenuous. But on to my point. The Traffic Management Act obliges the council to give discretion to motorists. It also obliges the council to look at cancelling penalty charge tickets after they've been issued, after the fact. It has come to my attention, which I brought to the council's attention, the Cabinet's attention, and the scrutiny panel's attention, and which have been ignored on several occasions to the extent I've now been told we're no longer going to talk to you about it because we don't like what you say, that this council may have given out 33,600 illegal, unjustified parking tickets across Wellingborough and Northampton County Council's area where it covers parking. I hear comments are rubbish, but I can't argue about it because none of you want to talk to me about it. Therefore, the sums involved range between 84,000 to 252,000. I think you may have to give the motorist back. How's that figure in your budget, since I've never seen any justification for taking it? Are you going to give it back to the motorist, or just pocket it and then start giving it to other causes after you've nicked it off the motorist? And the lead for parking, thank you for ignoring me every time I've asked to speak to you about this. I'm only a member of the public. Perhaps you might want to talk to me sometime about it when you have a minute. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much. Marcia Walker.
Chair and Council members, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this afternoon. And I'm going to be addressing Garana Housing Association, a long-established organisation, and long may they continue. Garana Housing Association, which has its home base in Wellingborough, now receives £36,000 a year from supporting people. It has, over the last 3 years, been a member of Support Wellingborough, and we've heard them mentioned already this afternoon, which won the Community Wellbeing Tender in Wellingborough. However, NCC decided to discontinue the whole tender on the 19th of December 2014, and the reasons given were due to their financial pressures and change in strategic direction. We are indeed very disappointed that after all the hard work in putting together a complex tender, the whole thing was discontinued. Garana was going to work in partnership with other BME communities to look at a new service model to support older BME people, given their growing needs and increased demand in people's needs all around the county. We had worked hard with partners to consider alternative service models required in the tender. Being part of Support Wellingborough, Garana benefited from being part of a wider collaborative organisation with offers such as access to a range of partner support and services to support Garana residents, partnership working with organisations supporting older people, and working with partners, just to name but a few. As a result of the discontinuation, we believe that the support to BME communities, and especially our older elders, will not be there. And we would like to ask the following questions. What will replace the community wellbeing tender? How will the needs of BME older people be taken into account as a specific equality impact assessment being undertaken in that area? And Garana is a specialist provider for BME communities. How would a new specialist be counted in the new arrangements? How will that work? These are just some of the points. And if anyone wants questions, we're happy to pass that on. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you. Ron Mundell.
Before I make any comments on the budget, I want to acknowledge the cooperation of Sarah Joblin. I filed freedom of information request, and she was very cooperative in answering my follow-up questions. So I just want to acknowledge that from that perspective, I thought the Council did its homework and was cooperating. I think my comments are largely going to focus on the process in which the budget is being set. I have to say, I made this point at a previous cabinet meeting, or possibly maybe a full council meeting, and I think I need to make it again, because I don't think it's been taken on board. The reason I filed the freedom of information request is because I found it very difficult to make heads or tails out of the budget, the 44-page document, using words like efficiency savings, disinvestment. I didn't know what those words meant. But I'm a university lecturer. what do you think most lay people within the county will make out of that document? I'm really concerned that the documents seem to be written for a very closed audience, possibly just councillors, and not for the general public. I was also concerned about the way consultation was managed. I have no problem with online consultation, but the problem with that is that I don't know how other people are responding to the budget proposals. I'm very traditional. I'm a university lecturer. I like to see my students. I don't believe in simply online delivery of lectures. I want to have interaction. So I would think consultation meetings in Corby, in Wellingborough, Kettering, and Northampton, I think would have been desirable. I think there's no reason why both could not have been done. I'm also concerned about the outsourcing of services. Not in principle, but I'm just really concerned about how it's going to be managed. Once you start outsourcing services, there's a challenge of how you're going to monitor the quality of the delivery. And then if you look at the NHS model of commissioning, we do know a great deal of the commissioning has gone to private firms, and it's very difficult to hold those firms accountable. In fact, if you try to file freedom of information requests, they'll say to you, we cannot respond because of commercial confidentiality. So one of my concerns about the outsourcing process is that we can be duplicating that whole process. I don't have really much time, actually, I have 24
Begin
seconds.
to draw to a close now, please.
24 seconds to talk about any particular services, but I do want the Council really to take on board some of my points. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Justin Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Justin Brown and I live in Northampton. I oppose cuts to our fire and rescue service. I oppose the scrapping of fire engines and replacing them with inferior appliances. As a county council, you seem to be able to find the energy and lots of money towards building a new headquarters for yourself in the town. You say that Project Angel may save lots of money over the next 30 years and is an investment. Why are you not investing in our fire service? Why are you not investing in saving lives rather than putting them at risk? Our fire service needs to be properly resourced and funded, not continually cut to justify budget deficits. Gimmicks like the Joint Fire and Police response vehicle. I mean, do you actually know how quickly a fire spreads? I do. Stop giving the people of this county gimmicks. Stop palming us off with these gimmicks. Stop short-term measures, the easy options, like cuts to our fire and rescue service that will have serious and long-term implications for us all. Now, I fear if you get away with this, what you're trying to do at Corby, as a county council, you'll replicate it elsewhere across this county until we're eventually left with nothing other than gimmicks and lives lost. Thank you.
Thank you. Bianca Todd.
Hello, Chair, councillors and members of the public. My name is Bianca Todd. I'm a Unite the Union member. I am a Left Unity member, but in Northampton I work for Community Courtyard. Community Courtyard works with those young people who don't access statutory services and works with ex-offenders. I guess what I wanted to say, having really not read a big chunk of your document, because in my view it's kind of unreadable for the everyday person, is what's going on in today's society. We live in Northampton where I'm seeing the same homeless people, George, the crack addict, in Northampton outside McDonald's every single week. We're living in a Northampton where actually what we're seeing is people who can't afford to eat, can't afford to heat their houses, who are really, really struggling. And what concerns me most is that I'm looking at a budget that I can see is going to kill people. And when I look around this room, councillors, I have to remind you that you have an obligation, not just for your own families, not for your parents, not for your children, but for my parents and for my children too, and for my grandchildren who I haven't met yet. And this budget actually puts them at risk. I don't want to see the firefighters have their times extended so they can get to my house and rescue people. I don't want to see a lack of firefighters. I don't want to see the outsourcing where I don't have a transparent service, where I can't actually make sure that people's needs are put first. I don't have confidence in a council which actually does not look after its looked after children effectively, where actually we're looking at a looked after children service but it's still nowhere near satisfactory. So forgive me if I go on, but I don't have full confidence in a group of people who have failed their young people, failed the people in Northampton. So it needs to go on the record that for somebody who does not have the political kind of aspirations or understanding of yourselves here, but I am very, very concerned. It is these types of meetings that actually stop people from becoming politically active. However, rest assured that what's happening across Europe with Podemos and Syriza is a group of people who are saying no more austerity, no more cuts. This doesn't have to be happening. You don't have to do this to the people of Northampton. And shame on you all when you actually put this budget through. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, that brings us to the end of the speakers from the public this afternoon. I'm going to invite Councillor Bill Parker now to present the budget.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm sure some of my Cabinet colleagues will respond to some of the points that have been made. What I'd like to do is to very quickly go through the changes to the budget since I announced the draft budget in December, and that, of course, follows the scrutiny review and a very sound assessment of what the autumn statement said, and then any other changes that are forthcoming as a result of both of those. I would just like, first of all, to respond, though, to the comment made by Councillor Loss with regard to the council plan. Now, of course, the council plan was never written as a financial document. Yes, it does have finance in it, but primarily it indicates how the county council will be moving over the next 12 months and the next 5 years. And of course it does go down in some detail with regards to the next generation working, which is the proposal. And when, of course, this isn't outsourcing. This is the way that the council's got to operate in the future, and a number of the proposals within there are very much in their infancy. Areas such as Breezy are well advanced and have been much discussed and documented over the last year or so, a couple of years maybe. But others are still in their infancy, and we're on the process of developing business plans for them. And one of the things that has been agreed, of course, is that scrutiny will be very much involved in this process. And a meeting with Councillor Hakewell only last week, we agreed that they would be very much involved. So I hope we can put to rest the fact that we are just bulldozing through these proposals, and that they will be properly looked at in terms of drawing up the business case, as I say, and then that scrutiny will look at them. But what I would like to do for a start, Mr. Chairman, is just look at a couple of the issues that came up through the scrutiny process. And if I may, I will start with the collaboration on collection and disposal of waste recycling. Now, already a series of discussions have taken place with the borough and district councils, involved in the council leaders, officers from the borough and county council, both in terms of waste and finance. And what have been examined is a range of initiatives relating to collection, disposal and recycling of waste that would enable proposed savings to be achieved. And a programme of work has now been developed, which will be subject to further investigation and consideration. And I would just add that at this point in time, of the 7 districts and boroughs, the amount of or percentage of household waste which is sent for recycling or composting is in fact only 45.9%, which is a very low figure, and does indicate quite clearly that there are a number of initiatives that can take place that will both of all improve this and will also achieve the savings that we're looking for. One of the others that came up was, which is, those who've got the papers handy, is 140902, which invests savings schemes, and the proposed saving of £1.5 million, but only 2.5 actually allocated to districts and boroughs in 14-15. The total allocated in previous years amounted to £4.5 million, including a second home's allocations in 2006-7. The pooling arrangement generated 1.7 in 13-14 for the county and will raise an estimated £5 million by the end of 15-16. And that, without the county council involvement, would not be available. And of course this also goes out to the districts and boroughs. One of the others that was talked about is and again Councillor Loft alluded to this, Empowering Councillors scheme proposal. And the proposal, you'll recall, was that we would reduce that to £5,000 per member, with a savings of just over £100,000 per annum. What's been decided following the discussions with scrutiny is, in fact, we'll retain the 7K because a lot of councillors do appreciate the money, but having said that, there is normally over £100,000 left over at the end of each financial year. So the proposal is to change it, to revert back to the 7K per member, and then take the money that isn't spent by the end of December. Clearly, we will look at the end of this financial year to see whether that has been successful. If necessary, we can then make changes next year if it isn't. And this is talked about in Appendix E and in Section 7.5 of the main report. With regards to government funding, the provisional budget saw no real change to the assumptions made within the draft budget that are presented to Cabinet in December. Although there was further movement of funds in and out of the local government funding. This included the reduction in top slice in respect of new homes bonus, and also a reduction in the MRP given to business rates, business line funding held at 2%. Both of these have been offset against the changes to the grant allocations. The final 2015-16 budget is based on the final settlement published, and this goes back to the autumn statement, the final settlement published on the 3rd of February this year. Overall, 650,000 improvement since the draft budget, and extra given to acknowledge pressures in relation to the removal of local welfare grant. The County Council, in fact, does not have any allocated funds to continue this support, and the 650k will now be used to cover the shortfall left behind of 400k, and that's already built into the medium-term financial plan. Future years funding reduction now assumes 13% for 2016-17 and 17-18, and then 7% thereafter, and that again is outlined in Section 12.1 of the main report. With regards to business rates, any business rates yield above the baseline is shared with the DCLE, beg your pardon, I don't know where I got DCLE from, DCLG, and the initial growth expected in April 13 has not been fully achieved to date. Hence the contribution from reserves in 15-16 as laid down in the draft budget of 268k with no change to the final budget. The business rates collection fund deficit of 2.7 million is an estimation using December forecast figures numbers, and is mainly due to the impact of backdated appeals for 13-14 and an estimated net yield for 14-15. Only 6 of the 7 returns from the districts and boroughs have been had been received when we finalised the budget. So this will have to be reviewed again now that the NNDR1 returns have been received and offset against the BRR reserve. The change in pooling arrangements will provide a greater dividend for future years and close the growth gap that we have until such times as economic development in Northamptonshire generates the expected business rates net yield. The RPI rates have also been changed for future years, and detail included within Section 12.10 again of the report. The impact of this results in less funding because the RIP and CPI rates are reducing, and this is referred to in the Section 151 Officers Section 25 report, where it indicates the impact of the reduced rates. Funding risks, the main areas of risk around the business rates baseline funding include the safety net fund, which is generated through a number of different sources, including any excess yield collected each year through business growth. The impact of cost of appeals and more pooling arrangements puts this pot at risk of not being sufficient to cover the total future safety net claims. The impact of this may result in future government funding being further top-sliced. More information will be known when the final NNDR3 forms for both 13-14 have been received and assessed. And just to clarify what the safety net is, this represents the threshold level at which the government will step in and provide financial support. Currently, where the net yield is less than 92.5% of the baseline figure, they will bridge the gap so that the threshold level of 92.5 baseline figure is achieved. Also, there is an expected review of business rates to take place in 2016, as well as the anticipated revaluation in 2017. With regards to council tax, the rate has been increased by 1.95% for all years of the medium-term financial plan to avoid getting caught by referendum-level calculations that have been introduced. The collection rate for 14-15 is an average 97.9%, which is in line with the national average. But when compared with shire counties, Northamptonshire is one of the lowest, and this again is shown graphically in section 14.8 of the main report. The tax base has improved mainly due to the increased collection following development of discount schemes, which was greater than anticipated, and the impact of completed new homes buildings. Overall average increase of 3% compared with last year and 1% thereafter. In 2015-16, proposed budget shows an extra 4.53 collection fund balance with an overall increase in the base of 1.4 compared with the draft. It needs to be noted that this represents an overall increase of £4.85 million compared with the estimate prepared in February 2014. And again, this is discussed in section 14.7 of the main report. Other government grants, mainly covering new homes bonus, education support grant and section 31 grant in relation to small business rate relief. The provisional settlement confirmed that the section 31 grant for SBRR would continue in 2015-16, and the impact of the 15-16 cap at 2% would also be given through this grant. Technical adjustments to the proposals are that mainly due to the loss of DCG and the impact of transfer to academy status has a big impact on the money that the county council receives. The remaining adjustments are due to expected changes as a result of better care fund and Care Act monies. Regarding the medium-term financial plan, the changes since the draft budget, the final settlement gave some 700k to compensate for this, which has been allocated to the growth item for ASC demand. Overall gap for 5 years is £148 million, as has been discussed previously, and the largest gap is in 15-16, which is of £68 million. The main base budget changes since the draft budget include funding, a slight increase of the final settlement, as I alluded to earlier, of 65,000. Grants generated a further £1.4 million. Council tax generated a further £1.36 million. The reserves set aside at the draft budget included some base which was released to support the ASC demand. The increased funding generated of £3.9 million has been added to, as I said, the ASC demand. The 15-16 saving requirement has been increased by 1.7 million due to the change in the pension proposal, which is outlined in 10.03.01, which has been offset against the increased growth item of the same amount. Savings for 16-17 to 19-20, these have now been reviewed, and those developed last year continue to be in place. The remaining balance has been categorised under strategic themes and were developed alongside the future ways of working as illustrated in the Council plan, which I alluded to a moment ago. Risk to delivery of savings, the overall 2014 position and anticipated squeeze on spend has become apparent, and this presents a continued risk moving forward, especially within adults and children's social care overall. This has been acknowledged within the body of the report and highlighted in the Directorate Perspective section. Moving quickly to reserves, the full detail is in Appendix L. Current estimates include schools and summarised within Section 21.4a in the main report again, and general reserves will be maintained at the agreed policy level of £12 million. The Council Tax Collection Fund of £4.3 million has been set aside within the Budget Delivery Reserve to manage the transformation of the life of the plan. There has also been a commitment to transfer £350,000 to the districts and boroughs to cover the costs incurred in implementing the local council tax schemes. A piece of work has been undertaken with KPMG to review the minimum revenue provision, and this is alluded to several times in various reports, charges and the reconciliation of the capital funding requirement. The work has now been concluded and a significant retrospective saving is expected, and estimates are taken into account in the reserves position, enabling the current risk in meeting future commitments for PFI and winter maintenance to be met. Turning now briefly to capital, announcement of the capital programme totalling £612 million, which is the committed capital programme and development pool over the financial period 2015-16 to 19-20. Announcement of the Council discretionary funding pot of £42.29 million, which has undergone prioritisation to support three key areas: priority council projects, ongoing support to the council's revenue budget, and extending the plan period for an additional year. Announcement of the development pool totalling £460.67 million, which has been prioritised against 36 individual capital investment schemes. Some of the larger schemes include new primary schools, housing growth totalling result of housing growth totalling £125.1 million, Project Angel £50.7 million, the A45 Daventry Development Link £35 million, and Superfast Broadband £19.2 million. Central Government grant passporting this year announced an end to automatic passporting of Central Government Department capital grants to relative service areas, enabled the Council to prioritise grants to deliver on local priorities it wishes to deliver. Review and recasting of Golden Rule 1, recasting of Golden Rule 1. Last year the Council's self-imposed borrowing limits were set at 11.5% of discretionary financing costs as a percentage of the Council's net revenue budget. This year's announcement amends this to 9%, following detailed work with audit partners recognising the significant progress made on the MRP and the continuing austerity being experienced by the Council on its revenue budget. Revenue of capital disposals, this year's review has concluded that projected pipeline receipts of £50.45 million over the period 14-15 to 19-20. This compares to 34.3 over the same period last year. The projected uplift is a result of further forecasting around receipts from strategic land holdings and the additional further sites such as those from the implementation of the East Northamptonshire Schools Review. Discretionary funding, support for the East Northamptonshire Schools restructure, which amount to £17.2 million. Of the projected uplift in capital receipts, £15 million will be exclusively used to repay the council debt rather than recycling 50% for capital reinvestment to enable the Council to remain within its affordability limits. It should also be noted that the discretionary support of £17.2 million includes some projected capital schemes as a result of implementation of the scheme. Mr. Chairman, that really summarises everything. There's no changes to the draft Treasury report, so I'm happy to move the report.
Thank you very much for that. Well, I've got 10 speakers in all. Michael Brown, Messrs Collier, Bearsworth, Hakewill, Lofts, and 4 Cabinet members. Councillor Brown. Do that I asked.
Good afternoon, people. I think we'll debate this in great detail next week, but there are a couple of issues I'd like to bring forward. In Appendix B, where we talked about the amount of people that actually commented on the council budget, I found that the response was 2,826 page views, which in our county is 0.4% of the population. To say 79% voted in favour of it is creative accounting, to say the least. I think what we should do, this is 0.4%, is unacceptable. We need, as a council, to get more people actively involved in these types of budgets. Well, that's for us to actually debate. Hopefully next week we will actually come up with that, some answers there. Appendix K, item 14 on page 40, it talks about the Northwest bypass, but it actually doesn't complete the Northwest bypass, it only goes part way. So can we actually say it's not the bypass, it's just a link road? And finally, on page 52, the summary 27.3 and 27.4, risks. Scrutiny has highlighted there are risks in this area, and we've actually put it down as amber. It's our opinion that the mitigation states that the council will instigate active management. However, the budget is extremely fraught, and we recommend that the risk is actually moved to red because we cannot afford to fail as a council. Amber is not high enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Collier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too have some very big concerns about the budget for next year, but I wanted to confine my comments to the draft council plan, actually. This plan for Next Generation Northamptonshire is a huge fundamental change to the organisation of this council. It really cannot be overstated how much of a change it is. The plans were first published just before Christmas. They were quite sketchy at that stage. There were only a few pages in them. We were able to have 1 hour with the Chief Executive as part of the scrutiny process, at which, because hardly any detail was available, we couldn't really have any substantive discussions about it, and you'll see the results of that in the scrutiny report. And then at 10:30 this morning, a revised version of that plan was published with more detail in it. I've not had a chance to look at that. I don't know whether the Cabinet have had a chance to look at it. Either the Cabinet have been discussing those more detailed proposals in private, or they haven't had any discussion themselves. And then just 9 days from now, full council is going to be asked to approve that revised plan, having had just 9 days to look at it, when it's a fundamental change to the organisation of the council. Cabinet, I really don't believe that is the right way to run a council. This council has had a reputation for openness in its decision making, for allowing opposition councillors and indeed administration councillors to speak, and the fact that I'm allowed to speak at this Cabinet meeting is a good example of that. But the way that this draft plan is being rushed into, when it's such a fundamental change, is really completely at odds with that open approach. It is not an open way of doing it. It's not a way that discusses the issues that there may be with that plan. Thank you. There are some big risks with the plan. There are risks to staff terms and conditions. There are risks to the public the vulnerable public who rely on the services that are delivered. There are risks to democratic accountability and the ability of democratically elected councillors to control the council, and there are even audit risks. And none of those risks have been discussed. We simply haven't got time to discuss them between now and next week, when the council is going to be asked to approve the plan. It really is most shabby, and I would urge you to think again and do it a different way.
Thank you. Councillor Beardsworth.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is my 14th budget, and having been here a little while and heard the pleas from the general public at every opportunity before Council decides on their budget, we've heard some really, really good speakers today who have put really good propositions forward and pleas to look after the people of Northamptonshire. Those are the vulnerable, the old, looked after children, and the poor. And basically we have a duty of care to those people. Now, we have this new plan coming together. Councillor Collier's touched on it. But it's so embryonic. It's so difficult to understand how it's all going to work. And yet, it says, you say, in 9 days' time we've got to vote on it. But, you know, we've voted on things in the past. I could go back to Carillion. I can go back to lots of different things that we've done that we've made mistakes with. We can't afford to keep making mistakes. Mistakes are expensive. And if we do this and it doesn't work out, you know, we keep getting told that this is it, this is the new generation, it's going to be wonderful. I mean, I can remember the old story of the Emperor's suit of clothes. You know, we were all told it was an absolutely beautiful suit, but there was nothing there at all. And I'm very, very worried, because it's not the rich that will take the pain, it's the poor. It's always the poor that take the blame. And I'm really worried that in future we'll have a sign that when you enter Northamptonshire, it'll say, "Welcome to Northamptonshire, Rose of the Shires. Don't come here if you're old. Don't come here if you're poor."
Thank you, Councillor Hakewell.
Old and poor from the north of the county. I do enter the county often. Chairman, what occurred to me during the presentations we've had today is that we would absolutely adore those speakers to come to our scrutiny, because it's not in the phrase of cameras, you don't have to stand at a podium, but a lot of people have come and spoken, and yet we do occasionally have scrutiny where no one comes. Now, that might well be because this is an opportunity of much greater and wider audience, I don't know, but it must also be part of scrutiny's role to try and make sure that everybody who spoke today could have come to a scrutiny meeting. There's no 3-minute rule, which of course you have to impose today to get the business of the council transacted. It's informal, it's off camera, and I'm quite sure there are some ideas that could come forward. So I think it's beholden on every councillor, including myself as chair of scrutiny, to find a way to bring those ideas forward in December and January in the future, rather than leaving people simply to ask questions which it's hard to answer on this day. So those who are here next year, December, around about mid-December, log the interest of coming to scrutiny and come along and talk to us. I just felt, Chairman, and thank you for letting me speak again, that that opportunity should be addressed, and we should be able to invite those people and have good ideas come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lofts.
Thank you, Chair. It's not just the people of Northamptonshire who have shown concerns about this budget. It's not just backbench councillors. It's not just the opposition. It's also your own Section 151 officer. And I do urge Cabinet to read in detail his report, because it is very revealing. I've had nearly 40 years' experience in local government, and when Section 151 officers start to use the type of language which is in this report, you start to listen to them. The report is full of references to risk, lack of investment, the need to act wisely, but most revealing of all is whether or not it actually sets out to fulfil its obligations. The Section 151 officer is required to comment on the robustness of the estimates and also on the adequacy of proposed financial reserves. If you turn to the conclusion, the Section 151 officer says the estimates are relatively robust. I ask you, is that relative to a bowl of jelly? Is it relative to a house of straw? He goes on to say he has greater concern than in previous years. This is the hardest 151 officer report that you have been presented with. The level of risk is substantial. He then turns to the question of the adequacy of reserves. In nowhere contained within this report is the word adequate. The only comment he can actually find to make is that the level of reserves is as high as can be resourced at the moment. Now that does not mention to me the word adequate. So, Cabinet, listen to your own officer. He presented you with a report which is highly critical of your budget. Are you confident in taking it forward?
Thank you. Councillor Scrimshaw.
Thank you, Chair. The first thing I'd like to say is that I hope the Cabinet were listening to the members of the public that spoke earlier. They made some good points, and it's our democratic duty as councillors to listen to them. There's no reason why we know any better than they do. I was always concerned, worried, and actually just a little bit suspicious that in the original draft budget there was no financial planning for years 2, 3 through to 5 of the financial plan, and that there was no forecast of earmarked reserves were published. It's interesting, earmarked reserves have just been mentioned. As of this morning, they've gone up 5 times, but up until earlier today, they were very, very inadequate. Now we see why those two things didn't happen. The Council has, at the last minute, been able to deal with those problems and has only today published the papers. And at the same time, they've managed to pull a rabbit out of the hat and fund the massive shortfall in this year's budget. But let's not kid ourselves. It's not because of any kind of sound financial management, but simply because at long last the Council have solved a financial problem that they've been carrying for years, ever since pretty much the Conservatives took control of the Council. For the last 7 or 8 years, there's been a technical problem as to how medium revenue provision has been shown in the accounts, and this has been highlighted again and again by the auditors over the years, and up until now, the Conservative administration have been incapable of dealing with it. They've now at last appointed a new manager and tasked him to come up with a solution to this problem that would be acceptable to the auditors, and they've now finally solved it. And it's this and this alone that has freed up money both to fill the gap in this year's funding, and because this solution is retrospective, going back many, many years, has also given a boost of tens of millions of pounds to our future plans. And while this is great for the people of Northamptonshire, because it means obviously the budget for next year has been given a little bit of a shot in the arm, it needs to be recognised that this is a one-off windfall and that couldn't possibly have been predicted. Had this been dealt with earlier, the Council could have spent money on potholes and children's services of the like over the last few years. And because councillors have been kept in the dark about this until this very morning, it means to a certain extent that the budget scrutiny process that we've just gone through had one hand tied behind their back. It also means that the Labour's and other opposition parties' alternative proposals have all got to be basically ripped up and start again. And we've only now got 24 hours to get them in. I can't say that I'm happy about that. I would have thought the administration wouldn't have held this back until the last minute. It does seem as though some clever politics has been taking place. Thank you.
Thank you. Now an opportunity for other members of the Cabinet to respond. I've got Councillor Robin Brown.
Chairman, thank you very much. First of all, can I congratulate you, Bill, on the presentation of the budget, and also in the way that we have been able to demonstrate a better understanding of the fundamentals going forward and the opportunity that will come from the council plan, which has been fleshed out to a degree in the papers that are with us today. I think it's very important that we listen to some of the speakers, and in particular Professor Will Pope. He made a very telling comment about us being aspirational in our challenge, making sure that we are satisfied that we have the highest standard of commissioning for the future. And clearly, for us to achieve that, we've got to embark on a more radical approach to the way that we deliver some of our services. I think this gives an opportunity for us to be able to deliver that, and I'm confident that my colleagues and I will work with you to make sure that that's what we ensure that we deliver. Always bearing in mind, however, that the services are driven by us being fair and equitable, and that that fair and equitable approach is made so that the most vulnerable in our community are looked at first. And I can be assured, and certainly I know that Suresh sat beside me, will ensure that that is also one of the priorities that we, in fact, take on board. Chairman, I'm very happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too was listening to contributions from our floor speakers. I'd like to thank them, and in particular I'd like to thank the lady from the Green Party from Wellingborough. If I'm quoting her correctly, she said NCC has little control over government funding levels. Mr. Chairman, she hit the nail on the head. We have very little control indeed. I think we need to take perhaps a reality check when we're listening to these contributions about the world we live in rather than the world as we'd like it to be. Let's look at the world we live in. Since the Comprehensive Spending Review, we've taken £177 million out of this council. That is an achievement. We've done it without damaging frontline services. Not a library has been closed. Things have modernised, they've had to be modified, but the frontline services have been maintained. Looking ahead, we've got to take £64 million out of this council in the current financial year, and I congratulate Councillor Parker on his industry in providing a robust and workmanlike budget. But looking ahead to 2020, that pales into insignificance, because it's quite clear from the figures which are on the record, which everybody can get from the internet, from the council's website. We have got to take £148 million out of this council based on the reduction of government grants. This year, the government grant, the RSG, is £77 million. By 2019 and 20, it would have shrunk to £23 million. Mr. Chairman, we cannot sit and do nothing. We have developed an alternative strategy. We've put forward a new model council, and that is what we will be debating at full council and which we are fleshing out now. But one thing, Mr. Chairman, is abundantly clear from all the contributions we've heard from the floor and from the opposition speakers, is there's no viable alternative coming forward. There's no alternative model, there's no alternative set of figures yet in any form of budget as to how opposition parties would deal with the world that we're in. As a Conservative administration, we have to deal with the facts. We dealt with them successfully for the past several years. We've been re-elected twice. These will have to go forward to the people, and I believe when people look at the situation, examine the options, they will give us a fair wind. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, Heather Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There seems to be a real concern amongst councillors and speakers who came along today about lack of detail about our forward plan. The main concern that we have, that we're focusing on, is the 2015-16 budget, and those proposals have been put before you in detail. But going on from then, it's already been made clear by scrutiny that we have already agreed that as plans get fleshed out, there will be scrutiny, that all councillors will have the opportunity to come forward, get involved in that scrutiny, put their ideas forward, and we sincerely hope that a lot of the people who've taken the time to come along today will join in with that, and as was said by one of the speakers, they will have ideas that maybe we won't have ourselves, that we would very much value. But can I emphasise again, we've got 68 million to take out in 2015-16, and as just been said by my colleague Councillor Clark, there is another huge figure to go on from that. We cannot continue to operate the way we have been. Everything that can be trimmed out of budgets has been trimmed out of budget. And contrary to what a number of people have said today, the fact that our Project Angel, our new building, is going ahead, it has all been scrutinised by this council, and it has been proved that it will save the council going forward revenue money. That is a cost-saving project for us. It is not for the glorification of the county at all. But nothing can stay the same. Nobody likes change, we know that. Everybody whose individual service is affected will fight against it. We know that. But we cannot carry on working the way we've been working, that we have to look forward to having a different model of working, and we have to find new sources of income from wherever, but we know it won't be coming from central government. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would like to take this opportunity and thank all the speakers for their contribution. I do listen to them with open mind. It is undeniable that elder social care is facing some very stiff challenges. Huge demographic pressure, not only for over 65, but also adults with severe disabilities, who through marvellous medical breakthrough are now living longer, where 20 years ago they would not have survived the childhood. Expectations on the high quality of care have also risen, and with this, the costs are rising. This is why we have set up a Fit for the Future programme board and published such a radical vision in our council plan. The CARE Act presents further challenges, some of which are fully known. However, we do believe the changes in legislation will improve the outcomes for the people of this county. Through transformation programme with the health, we are fully engaged with them in developing integrated models of care. Our Better Care Fund has been approved. This is a strong signal to the whole of the community of our intention to work together to achieve better outcome for people of the Northamptonshire. Mr. Chairman, there are no easy answers, no shortcuts. What we do know is that the way in which we deliver care must change. The current model is not sustainable for the future, and we must properly plan this now and work with all our partners and agencies to deliver this, the adult social care. And I'm happy to work with Councillor Parker in delivering the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Councillor Parker again on presenting a very excellent budget in very, very difficult circumstances. I just wanted to say a few words in my context as a portfolio holder that's perhaps not had the challenge of my colleagues here, in that all of the money for my portfolio, well, most of it, the vast majority, comes through the dedicated schools grants, which thankfully central government have recognised the need and they've prioritised education as something that they haven't cut. So I'm looking at this as through a slightly different angle, but we have to recognise that the council needs to change how it delivers its services. The speakers, most of them were made some very, very good points, but one of them mentioned we need to prioritise people, not projects. But to achieve that prioritisation of people, we unfortunately have to look at other projects and other ways of delivering those services. And I have to take some objection and offence even to the suggestion that we can't look after our looked after children. That is a massive priority for the council, and in its own respects is creating a huge budget pressure. But this is a huge challenge, but I'm very happy to support the budget in front of us today.
Thank you. Councillor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was highlighted earlier on about the pressures that we quite clearly have within the county, and the structure of the county council versus the structure that we'd like it to be has to change. We know status quo is not an option. We absolutely know that we are also at the sharp end, effectively, of central government planning and policy delivery. We are absolutely also crucially clear about where we need to be in terms of keeping our communities safe. And just looking through the council plan that we have before us here, it's quite an obvious indication that we have looked very carefully at the safety for all section. It is important at the end of the day to understand just how we get to those points of delivering a safe community. But we have to do that within a certain of the financial envelope that we have. We have a very restrictive practice in terms of where we can go to once we have obviously a limitation to our funding element. It is also important to bear in mind that we have strategic operations, strategic partnerships that we obviously reach out to. And in this particular era of looking for innovation, we need to make sure that we are being as effective and as accurate as possible in utilising the commercial integrity of those operations. We absolutely have to reach out to other partnerships, to other associations, to other ways of working and delivering our council services wherever possible through other organisations. If they are to remain for the people, at the end of the day they need the people to obviously operate some of those services. I will also pick up, Mr Chairman, on some of the points raised earlier on in terms of the scrutiny opportunity that all members of the public had to attend. I attended 6 sessions of scrutiny, 3 particular to this directorate, and it has to be said that at not any point in time were there members of the public present. The first half an hour session of each scrutiny session there is laid out especially for members of the public to make their views known. And these are public meetings that were publicly advertised, and obviously we always welcome public engagement of those elements. It is important, I think, that the public are well aware of those through obviously our sessions there, to engage and also promote their thoughts and their ideas. Clearly, in the day, we have a financial restriction, but if we can have early ideas, we can work with them. If we have suddenly late ideas, it is very difficult in terms of delivery. So I would urge, Mr Chairman, that we do our greatest to ensure that all members of this Council, from every single party, promote this to their communities on every opportunity. That is their duty to do so. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Thank you very much. Coming now to invite Councillor Parker to sum up. Before I do, I think I'd just like to mention one other area that is important to the Council this time, and that's the thing we're calling Race to the Top. I think we're recognising that young people in Northamptonshire are not getting, or many of them, are not getting the educational opportunities that they deserve. 1/3 of our children are in schools that need improvement. This isn't good enough, and this budget contains some additional resources to pursue the project called Race to the Top, which we will be announcing more fully at the end of this month. Basically, it involves 3 themes: intervention into the schools that are underperforming, and making sure they do perform; supporting aspirational schools with some funding and finance to develop their good practice; and planning for the future schools. Northamptonshire has to build, I think it's 16 new schools in the next 10 years. There's a real opportunity there to build a Northamptonshire model for education, which will be better than the one we've got at the moment. So I'm really pleased that's going to be in our plans for this year. Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you, Mr Chairman, and can I thank Cabinet colleagues for their support and also for responding to some of the questions that were raised during the public part of the speaking part. Just picking up a couple of the points that councillors particularly made during their couple of minutes out here, and particularly with regards to Councillor Brown, who expressed concern about the numbers of people who had actually, members of the public, who had responded to the public consultation. And I should be extremely interested to hear what UKIP proposals are to try and get more people involved. But I would just like to remind him of something. A few years ago, I, together with the finance officers, travelled to every single district and borough in Northamptonshire to attend well-documented public consultation meetings on the budget. The most people we ever had at one of these meetings was 10, and that was at Wellingborough. And believe it or not, the lowest number that we had was none, and that was in Corby. So we have tried lots of ways to get people to engage. It is very frustrating that people don't want to take part. And as Councillor Hakewell alluded to, and as 1 or 2 Cabinet members have alluded to, there were 15 people here today speaking, and members of the public speaking on various issues relating to the budget, but not one of them attended any of the scrutiny meetings. And I think that in itself indicates the lack of interest, other than to just come and make political points at this type of meeting. Councillor Collier, Councillor Beardsworth both alluded yet again to the council plan, and as I said at the outset of my delivery, the council plan, apart from Breezy, which is well advanced and has been discussed for quite a long time now, most of the other schemes are very much in their infancy. We are preparing, or officers are beginning to draw up the business plans. Scrutiny will be involved at various appropriate stages throughout the process. That's all been agreed, and we've already alluded to it. The simple fact is, though, that we cannot afford to continue the way that we have been in the past. There is just not the money around, and therefore we have to take this approach to the way that the services are going to be delivered. And once again, I will stress, they are not being outsourced. The County Council will have full control over all of these items. With regards to Councillor Scrimshaw, well, I think his comments were actually an insult to the officers in this County Council, because since the draft budget, and of course we then had to analyse the autumn statement, that didn't come out until February. They have been working incredibly hard on the papers to bring them up to date, and in fact I know that over the weekend they were still working on them. It's not because anybody's tried to hide anything. And one day, if Councillor Scrimshaw should ever be in the position that I and other colleagues are in, have to present a budget, then he will actually begin to appreciate the amount of work that goes into this. It isn't a case of drawing up a few proposals that go against what we're suggesting and putting them forward for the officers to see 5 days before the actual council meeting takes place. To present a budget of this magnitude takes a hell of a lot of work, not just by cabinet members, but particularly by officers over a long period of time. And as I say, I think his comments are an insult to officers in the County Council. And I move the report, Chairman.
Do you agree with the recommendations? Thank you very much. Moving on to item 8, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. This paper has come before you today as part of our policy to declare publicly every stage that we go through along the improvement journey for children's services. This paper is just to bring to your attention a copy of the letter that went off from the Improvement Board Chair to the Secretary of State at the end of October, and it's the response from the Secretary of State that came in January following the Ofsted visit that we had late last year. I'm very pleased to bring this to your attention. It does show in there just how hard we've been working, and it also points out, and I don't really need telling this, that there is a very significant task ahead for Northamptonshire County Council and its partners, and our partnership working on the improvement of these services is absolutely crucial. But I do want to publicly recognise Alex Hopkins and his team for getting us to this stage. We are very much on target to get us out of the inadequate status, but there is still an awful lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you. You agree with the report? Thank you. Item 9, Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Oh, hang on. We have Mr. White. Is Mr. Whitehead still here? I think he left, didn't he? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you. This paper that comes before you today is concerning the proposal to change some of the venues and opening hours for our children's centres, or for some of our children's centres. Unlike other authorities, our funding level for the children's centre services has been retained for providing early help. And one of the reasons for the changes that have happened is as a response to the Ofsted inspection that found our early help to be inadequate. So this is a priority area for us. We do need to improve this early help to ensure that families don't reach the real crisis stage. This particular paper that's come before you today are proposals that have come from our 2 providers that cover 9 of the contract areas in the council. And they have had the opportunity to look at the buildings that are being used and the hours of opening, and they've also had to bear in mind the conditions that were part of the contract that was to provide a considerable amount of work at home with those families that particularly need it and those families that don't engage very easily. On the consultation side here, before we went out to the public consultation, all councillors were given the opportunity to be briefed. We went through the public consultation period, and a very high percentage of the consultation responses were not actually responses to the questions that were being asked. They were more on the actual model that had already been put in place. But as a result of a number of the things that members of the public have raised with us, then we do have a plan to take note of all of the concerns that have been raised to see what we can do about all of those concerns. And if you look at item 4.14 in the paper, you'll see those referred to. The particular premises that we are no longer going to use, the current buildings in the case of Road and Brixworth are on the outskirts of the villages and suffer low footfall from families. The venues at Highfield Nursery and Earls Barton School have limited space, and the provider has identified more suitable venues in the locality. And the building at Manor School in Raunds actually belongs to the school, which is an academy, and it isn't currently available for the local authority for the delivery of children's centre services. The providers actually intend to go out and use far more community venues for operating this service than was ever done before, and in the area that I represent, which is a very large geographic area with one children's centre service operating from there, the fact that they're actually going out to some of the other premises and holding sessions in other areas is a big advantage. So I actually recommend this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got 5 speakers, Councillors Brookfield, Coombe, Scott, Meredith and Hughes. Councillor Brookfield.
Thank you, Chair. We on the opposite side of the chamber certainly appreciate the work of officers, and that's why we want to continue employing them. That's just my riposte to Councillor Parker. But I'm here to concentrate on talking about the premises that are used for children's centres, and I see that that's what the report focuses on. Councillors have spent many hours, which we've devoted to scrutinising the work of children's centre services, but I understand that from this report we are looking at the actual premises. We've always regarded children's centres as being welcoming and inclusive, and indeed they were introduced by the last Labour government, and so we're very proud of them and we want to keep them. We were hoping that the Sure Start programme would have been rolled out further, but we did see that slow down, and we certainly want not to see this service diminished in any way. They're important not just in urban centres but in our rural areas of the county, because they're about accessing services for not just for families who are facing difficulty, but for all families. And that's why it's important that we have our children and families accessing a place where they can mix together, where there is no stigma attached to attending a children's centre. And that's why we don't want to just see the universal children's centre services in libraries and everything else moved to a children's centre or targeted in family homes. We want to keep that array of services in the children's centres. We don't think that the libraries are ideal settings for children's centre services for many reasons, and my colleagues will develop that issue as well. We want to know where have some of the children's centres gone, because we know some have closed. We want to know how many. We want to know how many Sure Starts have closed in the county. And we see a reduction in the hours that the children's centres are open as a reduction in service. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Coombe.
Thank you. Councillor Clark mentioned that we need to deal with the world that we're in, not the world we'd like to be in, although I'd hope that world would be a little bit better. And for that reason, it would have been rather nice at the meeting that I attended at Croyland if at least one person of that decision-making body of the administration had actually been there to actually hear the concerns that were raised by people at that meeting. In terms of using libraries,
there are a lot of safeguarding issues, and I'd like to think that everybody here who's been part of that decision-making process has actually been into the libraries that are being used, and particularly into Wellingborough Library. Wellingborough Library, like any sort of, well, that particular municipal type building, is a very unwelcoming place. It has 2 flights of stairs, it has a lift. It really isn't ideal for people with small children. Also, if you're trying to use a building for multiple purposes, it's a bit like being a jack of all trades and master of none. A public library, we all remember going into libraries, particularly when we were younger, and being told to be quiet. There are people who go in there as a sort of sanctuary for reading and other activities in there. And there have been complaints from the people who use those libraries. The fact that there are children running around, there are children in the way of books. It's not the ideal environment to try and run all these individual services. But it really is the issue of safeguarding children that we should be concerned about. With the stairs, there are no stair gates. Now, the officer that came to Croyland did say that money was going to be invested into Wellingborough Library to make it more suitable. Now, perhaps you could actually tell me what this money is and what it's going to be spent on, because I haven't actually seen in any of the previous documentation, and she wasn't aware of exactly what it was, what was going to be spent. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. What are we about here? Are we seeing the tail wagging the dog? Because that's what I get a feeling for when I look across the county, when I see the 2 organisations we've commissioned services to dictating what they're going to pay for and what they're not only to us, but to the buildings they're using as well. And this is what we're going to see in the future in our commissioned services. The issue of libraries and using libraries is increasing and increasing. They're just not suitable. They're not in the right places. Children's centres should be in the area that people can wheel their pushchairs to. That's what they're designed for. That's what the Education Parliamentary Commission said they were for in their reports, and have repeated that on a number of occasions. It's not happening here. You're asking them to go to 10 centres where they have to, it's a long way away in a number of cases, they have to pay for parking, and if you're looking at a lot of these preventative services, which is what you're trying to design them into now, not just the universal services, which they were there for originally, and what we're seeing is that people are starting to turn away from them. I asked for figures, and I've repeatedly asked them at 3 different meetings, including a cabinet meeting, for the figures for Corby Library. How many families with children under 5 use Corby Library? In a survey we conducted of about 700 people filling in the forms, only 8% did that. Is that the same across the county? Let us know. You're hiding these things from us and you're pushing these things through. It's just not good enough, Chair.
One minute.
Thank you, Chair. Also, you keep saying, you use the phrase, we always welcome public engagement. We've heard it quite a few times today. And in fact, public engagement or consultation regarding children's centres started over 3 years ago. You're still consulting, you're still getting the same answers. The public, by majority, don't accept it, yet you're saying they're looking at the wrong thing. They're not looking at it in the right way. They're not answering the questions correctly. Either you're open to consultation or you aren't. And Chair, from what I've seen, you're not.
Thank you. Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, my first question to you all is how many people from the Conservatives who represent rural areas have actually visited an up-and-running children's centre? I would suggest that hardly any of you at all. My comments are some of the speakers have said about libraries being used. Libraries are totally inadequate. Let me just give you one quick story. I visited a lady only 4 weeks ago, little bubby, with her mother, starving hungry. Actually, the little child was nearly dead, dying with hunger, because they had no money. What did I do? I had to go to a children's centre. First thing come into my mind, go there, see what they can do. Within 25 minutes, they had a food parcel to that house. They had heating. The council are now, through the children's centre, are supplying heating, proper heating. That's what a children's centre is for. You're reducing hours. You're going to put young children. How could I have gone to a library and asked them for a food bank? No way, no way. This policy on children's centres. Now, the other thing, we had many people, many speakers come here and ask for assurance from the Conservative, from the administration, saying, will you give a pledge not to touch children's centres? And you made that pledge. You made that pledge. It's in the minutes. You made that pledge that you wouldn't do it. And now you've done it. You're looking to cut services to children's centres. Reducing the hours is virtually like doing away with them. Because you will not have that facility to go there at 5 o'clock is the time I went there to get help. That will go. That will go. You're going to reduce the hours so they'll be there from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. What is the good of that? Young families need that support. Young families need that help. I asked you, take this back. Have another look.
1 minute to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a look. It's a very dangerous policy that you're undertaking. Children's centres was implemented, yes, rightly, by the Labour government, was implemented to help the vulnerable. And that's what it should be, to help the vulnerable. So have a look at this policy, go back and rethink what you're saying, Mr. Chairman, because it's not the right way to go. You will not get my support. You will get my support if you say you'll go take this back and have a look. You'll get my support 100%, because I will approach people and say the Conservative administration are not in favour of children's centres. Thank you. How do you turn that off there?
Thank you very much. Councillor Lofts.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted really to refer to road because that's in the area that I represent. And I fully understand the reasons why the current children's centre is not felt to be suitable. In fact, I think that the potential users of it have voted with their feet and the use has been greatly reducing. What is a concern, though, is that no clarity has yet come forward about where the new venues will be in actually delivering the new services, because the library and road is only nominally going to be called the Children's Centre. And I think as well that I would want to be reassured that there will be ongoing monitoring of the service to make sure that the improvements we hoped would be delivered are actually seen on the ground. And finally, in relation to road, I know that the Parish Council is very interested in having discussions about the use of the old Children's Centre because they're looking for a venue for a youth club. And in addition, there is a preschool located in Road which is also interested in finding premises. So I think that ongoing dialogue about the use of the current premises would be very beneficial. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chairman. I was sad to hear that one of the speakers said we don't care about our children, especially as every scrutiny committee which I chair, we invite the Director of Children's Services, Alex Hopkins, to come along and answer questions about how we're progressing and so on. And not very many of the other councillors, or in fact members of the public, hardly ever appear. So if people are really concerned about the progress we're making about children's services, I would exhort you, like the other chairman of the Scrutiny Committee have done, to come along and ask the questions about how we are progressing and what progress we're making. I would thank those who turned up to the scrutiny workshop about children's services. Sadly, again, I think there were 12 of the councillors there, so many councillors didn't avail themselves of the opportunity, because there we had the representatives of Action for Children and Spurgeon's, who we were actually able to question about the premises they were using, where they were going, the programme they were doing. As an outcome from that, all councillors should have received the programme from Action for Children or Spurgeon's, except of course Corby, which is a different case, should have received their programme. It's been, I know, sent out by James. So you can see the activities, where they're going on, and so on. This is one of the outcomes of that meeting that I asked for, and I'm glad to see that the representative of these organisations have done so, along with their websites and their phone numbers, which they've been brave enough to put on the sheet. So if you're very concerned about what's going on in your particular venue, and obviously it depends which of those organisations you relate to, you can phone them up and say, what are you doing about this, where is the meeting going on, and so on, and go straight back to them. I would urge you to do that, because they're the people we're employing to do this. Let's put the pressure on them and say, what are you doing about this, and what are you doing about that? As far as monitoring goes, there are one other point I'd like to raise, that of course, if you had had a starving child or somebody who you couldn't help, you could have gone along to the library on a Sunday, where you'd have been able to contact somebody who is not only a librarian now, but has also had training in a wider variety of activities, who'd have been able to put you in contact with the appropriate person to help. The Children's Centre's never been open on a Sunday that I've ever recalled. I would finish by saying that I would urge everybody to make best use of the Scrutiny Committee and contacting these very organisations, so that we can keep a good track of what's going on, and I can assure you that the Scrutiny Committee will be asking questions about how we're progressing at future meetings, and have it very soon on the agenda to see whether we are actually performing, they are performing, the services that they say they are doing. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Chairman, thank you. I was initially indicated I wanted to speak on the basis of supporting the paper and extolling the virtues, essentially, of the benefit of having universal services in the libraries. I'm somewhat shocked, nay, I think I should say surprised, that the opposition have found that the libraries are not suitable to provide any services for children. In fact, it causes me concern that they fully have misunderstood exactly what it is we're trying to do. And I think that one of the issues we've got is the issue about the benefit of developing the libraries into community hubs, which really do have an impact upon the lives of everybody in our community. It's sad, really, that we have but the limited number that we've got at the moment. And if there was money available, I feel that there was every opportunity to increase the library, we would do. Because, in fact, if we can develop an understanding that that library is a safe haven where you can go and find levels of support which give you the information and the confidence to be able to use that service and use the information in a way which will help you as an individual, then we are really achieving things which have been lost to the community over the last 15, 20 years. So my personal view has been strengthened on the fact that we are doing the right thing, because of the dinosaurs of the left are on the basis of saying that we do not need to use the libraries for this type of service, then far better that we progress with what we're doing. And in truth, I think that what you're proposing is excellent. I can also confirm, of course, that in the development of the libraries, it's important that we invest on the basis of providing baby changing facilities, increasing the access to toilet facilities, and making certain that if there are any safeguarding issues, they are dealt with as a matter of priority. So, rest assured, whilst I have the responsibility for that portfolio, I will make that a priority. And I look forward to perhaps in the future some of the opposition, recognising the benefits that come from maintaining and growing the library as an opportunity within the county. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to add an endorsement to this, that libraries are safe and trusted zones. They are safe and trusted Library Plus zones from that point of view. People traditionally looked upon libraries as the pin-drop quiet areas where you could just take out a book or read very quietly indeed. These are now very active environments. My library at Hunsbury is a very active children's centre, library, community hub, absolutely full engagement zone there. And I do welcome the opportunity here just to perhaps flag up the success of Hunsbury Library and the staff that work there very well indeed. The volunteers that come into the library are superbly successful and add a tremendous benefit to it too. It's a very community involvement, it's a very good, fun, friendly environment, it's a big family environment, it's a non-judgmental space, and I think that's really important for all our library areas. All our community spaces need to be non-judgmental, and this is a very safe environment to be in. So I have to say I do welcome this report, and I do endorse the library usage. I think it is the right place for our communities.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. If I just go through some of the comments, Councillor Brookfield, you spoke about target families and trying to say that we were, in a way, stigmatising the children's centres by just targeting those on lower income. Can I just emphasise that absolutely anyone can suffer with postnatal depression. They don't have to be on low income. They could be from a high income family. They could be just as isolated in their home as anybody else. So the fact that we are saying that we must target people at home doesn't necessarily mean that we're only targeting those on low income, because that's not the case at all. And Councillor Coombe, you seem to have a bit of a lack of understanding about libraries and what has happened to libraries over the last few years, and what the library service is being used for as far as this service is concerned. A lot of we've been holding rhyme times in libraries with literally thousands of children going there for several years now. The Action for Children and Spurgeons, although they're making the library the base for some of their services where they're actually keeping their records, etc., they'll be using community venues for events. They won't just be using the libraries. And Councillor Scott, can I just say that some of our children's centres, and this is why some of these that we're pulling out of them, they weren't all put in the right place. Money was thrown at children's centres over the years, and some of them, when it first rolled out, were very much targeted to where they needed to be. But towards the end, there were children's centres opened that probably never should have opened. Money probably was wasted by just saying you have to open more and you have to open them in certain locations. So I think we're putting right some of the things that were done by the Labour government, I have to say. Councillor Meredith, actually I'm really concerned about you. You seem to have an obsession about probably even closing libraries. Some of your comments, I just found them quite unbelievable, and the way you were shaking your head when Councillor Brown was speaking. If we were actually putting on the table that we wanted to close libraries, I wonder what you'd all be saying then.
Come on through the chair, both of you.
Yes, sorry, sorry, Mr. Chairman. Can I just say that we were, again, I will repeat it again, we were told by Ofsted that the service that was being provided for early help from some of our children's centres was not good enough. Some of them have always been really good, but a number of them have not. Councillor Lofts, thank you for some of your positive comments, and thank you for putting some suggestions forward about the old building there. Yes, we will be monitoring the service. It is part of the contract that we will be ensuring that we are getting improvements to the service, not standstill improvements to the service. The other speakers, can I just say thank you for coming in with your comments, and I will confirm what Councillor Gonzalez de Savage said. Our libraries are safe and they are trusted, and I'm very pleased that Councillor Brown has announced some improvements are to take place. I recommend the report. Thank you.
Agree with the recommendations? Thank you. Item 10, Councillor Patel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a pretty straightforward report for your consideration. Voiceability won a competitive bid to deliver advocacy service in 2010 on behalf of the County Council. It was 3 years contract with 2 years extension option, which we exercised in 2013. On 31st of July this year, our advocacy service contract for adult social service expires. In normal circumstances, we would review the specification of our service needs and enable another competitive tender to find suitable organisation to deliver it. The issue that we have, Mr. Chairman, is that with the first stage of care Act coming into this April, we have to use this coming year to evidence properly changes to both the volume of those with advocacy needs and the nature of advocacy needs themselves. As it sets out in the report, if we were to just restart the competitive process now, we have real risk that service will be inadequately specified to meet the future needs of our service users. Mr. Chairman, I do not want to run the risk. After consultation with our officers, I am asking Cabinet today to extend the voiceability contract for further 8 months so that we will be better informed and deliver a better specified contract that will meet needs of our service user. So I'm happy to answer any question, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I've got one speaker on this item, Councillor Butcher.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I would like to say that I would actually agree with this that's coming through today, for the simple reason is what we've heard today from people that's been here, how much everybody is concerned in Northamptonshire about the well-being of elderly people and people with disablements. But I do have a few questions because, yes, we do have to listen to everybody's voice in this and get the opinion. So perhaps if you could just clarify for me, please. Can the Cabinet member can confirm whether or not we have any indication of how satisfied people are with the current provider? And secondly, page 36 also states that the TUPE implications of the expiry of this contract. Could actually the Cabinet member expand on that, please, and explain what the implications could be? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and can I thank Councillor Butcher for her comments. The voiceability, I think, understand they've supported over 19,000 people with this contract. So, but I'm happy to share with her more information when we sort of meet her. And the other one is obviously she mentioned about the page 30, the TUPE. Obviously, the new contract in the future will need to take into the account there could be a TUPE implication. What we will do is follow the new process and ensure the diligence when we award the new contracts. Thank you.
And with that, extension. Thank you. Item 11, Councillor Gonzalez-Savage, but first we have 5 speakers, I think it is. Is that the order you want them in? Dave Schofield, Colin Wells, Ben Muddle, Christopher Hunt and Gary Mitchell. Right, Mr. Schofield.
Mr. Chairman, elected members, my name is Dave Schofield and I've served in the Fire and Rescue Service for 28 years. I've also lived in Corby for over 50 years. In this time I've seen many changes in the fire service, not only in equipment but also in the new methods of firefighting. I've openly embraced many changes over this time. However, the changes being proposed in fire cover at Corby are amongst the worst I've ever experienced, and in my opinion, a backward step in providing fire cover for the people of Corby and the surrounding areas. Corby is an expanding town, one of the largest growing in the country.
To once again reduce the number of firefighters at Corby is remiss, to say the least. We lost 4 posts only a few years ago due to cuts. Now another 12 have been put forward, totalling 16. How can we hope to provide safety not only for the residents of our community, but also firefighters who openly put their lives at risk to help others? Myself and also many of my colleagues are sad and disappointed with the proposals put forward by our Chief Fire Officer. I understand we are looking to save money, but surely that shouldn't be at the expense of lives. We as a fire authority are meant to provide a robust fire service that can meet the demands of our ever-growing community. The new technology that has been brought in is nothing new. We've had Cobra for over 5 years now. Cobra is just another tool in the toolbox, and one I may add that is not used as often as some would lead us to believe. If we are to keep the people of our town safe, we need to ensure that whatever system we put in place is robust and will stand up to the demands placed upon it. It has been suggested we have an RDS section at Corby to enable us to keep our second appliance in the town. I would like to point out this system is already in place across the brigade and fails on a daily basis to mobilise appliances and personnel. At any given time through the day, we have approximately 12 pumps off the run throughout the county. Why? Because the system is a failing one. But with the proposed increase in response times and an introduction of RDS system that is failing every day, I can't see that this is progress or is safe. We had more fire cover and personnel in Corby 30 years ago. The town is increasing in size in all directions, yet we're proposing to reduce the amount of firefighters. This will in turn affect the service we deliver. I would ask you to think very carefully before you make your decision on this drastic reduction in cover. One day you may need to call upon the fire service and the dedicated people who serve within it. Ask yourself how you would feel if one of your loved ones was trapped in a burning building and it was going to take over 20 minutes for help to arrive. No one can or should put a price on life. Therefore, I would urge you to carefully consider reducing any more frontline staff. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Wells.
Chairman, councillors, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today and to listen to our thoughts and concerns. The document that has raised our concerns importantly, as well as the IRMP, which is item 11, is subsection 24.6 in agenda item 7 of the medium-term plan budget. When we discussed the paragraph with the Chief Executive at the Council at a consultation meeting, he said he wasn't aware that it existed, and if he had have been, he would have removed it. Therefore, I was quite concerned when we find it still coming through into the final budgetary statement, and I will just read that sentence that gives us cause for concern. This is in relation to fire service provision. The national austerity climate is forcing the service to review its basic standards of service with a view to extending attendance times and reducing the service provided in order to remain within the tight budget envelope that is being set. We all appreciate that austerity is having an impact on us all, but where life is concerned, implementation of these type of cuts will only lead to significant loss of life and more increased loss of property. There are two things that affect a rapid reduction in prevention of spread fire and save life, and that is speed of response and the weight of response. The implications of delaying and decreasing on both of those, as are in this report, will only add to the worsening effect that we're currently seeing through the limited effect of our retained resources that aren't available on a daily basis as we would like them to be. The IRMP that is in front of you on page 22, the target operating model, talks about looking at new ways of working to improve our service. I would ask how we can improve our service when we're talking about a reduction in numbers and an extension of response times, i.e. taking longer for fire appliances to get to the addresses that they're mobilised to. Thank you very much, Chairman. Fire can spread and take lives. It is not discretionary. It doesn't discriminate between whether you're rich or you're poor, or whether you live in the towns or the rural areas. People in certain high risk groups are more prone to fire, but once fire takes hold, it doesn't matter if you're Conservative, Labour, Green Party, IRMP, town or rural. It will take hold of your property and put your life at risk. I would suggest that perhaps some of those in the rural areas will be suffering the most extensive losses because the delays and response times will be increased more to their areas than they will be in the towns that will have those bigger stations and hold time areas that are on call more regularly. So I would urge you generally to consider the impacts of these recommendations. Our Chief Fire Officer is trying to do the best he can with a budget that is being forced upon him by you guys and ladies that are elected to represent your community members, and to downgrade their service is not doing a just cause to the X they put in your box on the ballot papers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Muslim.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Councillors, members of the public. My name is Chris Hunt and I am operational firefighter at Malton Fire Station. I've served in this brigade for 32 years next month. I'm currently a watch manager. I'm currently the FBU Health and Safety Rep for the station, as well as my capacity as the firefighter charity rep for the station. I've seen a lot of changes, and I can tell you obviously that these cuts will cost lives, but I want to talk to you today about the people, the firefighters that I work with, that have to put up with these cuts, that have to look at each other and go to these incidents, and the people that we save when we're there, the people who rely on us to put their fires out, the insurance rates that are likely to go up as a result of our not getting to their premises in time. Yes, we'll save the lives, but the houses will be burnt because firefighters haven't got the necessary resources and manpower to actually make a difference. All that will come to pass. I want to tell you one example that I had only a couple of weeks ago when I attended an RTC. It was a road traffic accident. We attended this at Western Fable Centre, and we were there doing our bit with the police service, doing what we could in as quick a time as we could. And just to elaborate on the fact that the ambulance service, being with the cuts they've got, took over an hour to mobilise an ambulance to attend the casualty that we had in the car. We, the police service and the fire service, had to stand around and wait. I don't want to see that in the future, where the members of the public have to wait half an hour at a road traffic collision because firefighters, police officers and ambulance services have had so many cutbacks that they cannot respond in the time necessary. Please preserve our frontline services. You asked for ideas to remedy this, and I would say go back and look at the frontline services and preserve them and take the cuts from other places other than the front line. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is it Mr. Muddle?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I come here today, I haven't pre-planned, but what I'd like to do is highlight to you in this document the IRMP. It says a safer Northamptonshire together. It feels that the guys on the front line, such as myself, we're not in this together with you guys. You're here talking about figures and budgets and constraints. We're talking about lives and people. It's about time those two things came together. If you're trying to deliver the service we've got now, under these budget constraints, you will have blood on your hands, I'm afraid. These cuts mean people's lives will be at risk. Yourselves and your families will wait longer for a fire engine. When that fire engine gets there, it will not be as equipped as the fire engines we see today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Mitchell.
Good afternoon. Gary Mitchell, Vice Chairman of Fire Brigades Union, speaking on agenda item 11. On February 6, 2015, Northamptonshire County Council put out a press release stating that listen to the people of Corby. They had agreed to maintain 2 appliances at Corby and enhance that fire service with a Cobra intervention vehicle. As per the statement, I've got it here if anybody wants to read it, but I've got it in front of me. Yet the plan before you today states the very opposite. Page 23, bullet point 2. This is a blatant attempt to mislead both firefighters and residents of Corby and surrounding areas. If this IRMP document is not amended to reflect the press release issued by this county council, then the whole process will be seen as a sham without credibility. The service received over 1,000 responses to the RMP, the vast majority opposing these plans. A 5,000 signature petition opposing these plans was handed in to the last cabinet meeting. Yet, as it stands, the council and the service still doesn't listen. What really brings it home to me that this plan is nothing more than a cost-cutting exercise, with no concern for my members' safety or the safety of Northamptonshire residents, is that I've now read in Andre's paper that he's going to present in a minute, that the service intends to carry out a review of its standards of operational response. With the intention and the outcome of that review already known as it's set out in the draft budget, paragraph 20.4.6, that is, to increase the time taken to respond to incidents and reduce the service provided. The proposed review formed no part of the original RMP document that went out for consultation in October and did not form any part of the consultation process. Yet it now forms part of the document before you. This is total disregard for the people of Northamptonshire. I'm sure if it had been a part of the original consultation, you would have had thousands of responses in opposition. You, the elected members, need to realise and understand what you are asking our Chief Officer to do when you slash the fire service budget. These cuts in funding are and will put lives of firefighters at risk, and Northamptonshire will not have the fire service it needs and should have. Andre, please amend this RMP to reflect the consultation response and the NCC press statement. I ask all elected members, please do what's right, stop these cuts to a vital emergency service before it's too late. And for your information, I did attend scrutiny before Christmas and still didn't get an answer. Thank you.
I've got two councillor members to speak. Councillors McGee and Councillor Meredith. Councillor McGee.
I've just got to introduce it.
You're right. Okay. Thank you, John. You're practising. Andre.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report before us is a 28-page report containing the Community Protection Plan, our IRMP document, and the full action plan for 2015-16. Quite clearly, it has a full review in terms of the operation and the Community Protection Plan that went out for a full consultation in line with DCLG guidance of 12 weeks, which started on the 21st of October last year. I'm very grateful, Mr. Chairman, to the very robust and diligent team who've been putting this together, and I have to say that without a doubt the documentation they've also collated, attended, supported, and obviously gone through in fine detail all the public representations that have been made. It's the largest ever response that we've had. It's significant in terms of obviously where we are. It's not significant in terms of any small amount of work, because it really has been something of a substantial nature. The 59-page consultation summary report will give you full details, Mr. Chairman, and also the authority coming up, obviously, as we promote this for wider consideration and consultation to the full council next week, of over 1,000 responses in terms of the consultation questionnaires. The majority of those were carried out, obviously, through the web, as well as obviously in person, where before we have hard copy too. There were 46 station visits, 12 public community outreach events, full and increased community involvement, including positive engagement with full BME groups, a point that was picked up on last year, and we've worked very steadily with our joint community prevention team as a result of this to increase that engagement, which has been very important to us. Full stakeholder engagement has been welcomed, encouraged, and obviously included. Public consultation events are very widely attended where possible at the end of the day, and we absolutely appreciate that this does also coincide with a budgetary consultation. Therefore, maybe the imbalance in terms of the acceptance or understanding that there obviously is once we have released the RMP consultation, this is obviously the Community Protection Plan, that there will be additional pressures. And that's why obviously on page 20 we indicated that the challenge moving forward did include foreseeable pressures. And we indicated, that the line indicates that the County Council budget planning cycle is annual, therefore it is possible that savings we must make could increase further. It's substantial, it's important, and we have explained this when obviously we have been questioned on this. This is something that quite clearly does not run in sync with the RMP consultation. It's an update, obviously, as we have here with us on an annual basis. A lot of fire authorities don't do that. We do. We come through with a very clear response to this, and obviously we go out and consult with the people as it's our business plan. Mr. Chairman, the views of the firefighters today and on many other days have been very sincere, and I absolutely respect their wishes and their thoughts about their service, which they're very proud about. They are genuine people who obviously represent community engagement, who they are there unconditionally 24/7 and work very hard, whether they are whole-time firefighters or they are retained firefighters. They are being faced quite clearly with challenges that we need to address, as we are being faced with those challenges through from central government to local government. It is something that quite clearly status quo is not possible, no matter how much we'd like that to be in terms of the deployment of assets or people, and that is because quite clearly the financial envelope that we have is a very difficult one, but very important that we sustain the ability, quite clearly, of community protection together with a balanced budget. Those two elements obviously do mean that we have some significant plans obviously that have to come through. We have consulted on those plans. We have met very carefully with those individuals that would be affected and with also the areas of the people too. I've met personally with Corby Borough Council, representatives of Corby area. I've also met on many other areas too, because we work as a county, and county together is the most important thing here to remember, that we support each other all the way through. This is not a single station, this is not a single firefighter that we affect. We affect the entire county and whatever we do from that point of view. So we go out and we work together, which is very important indeed. We have a very responsible plan that we obviously consult upon, and I'm willing to take questions on that, Mr. Chairman, but quite clearly I will just confirm that this plan is for recommendation to full council next week, and therefore the full fire authority, all councillors are entitled to make their opinions felt. Any questions asked? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor McGee.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just probably like to declare an interest here, not only as a Northamptonshire County Councillor, but as a Corby Borough Councillor, but most importantly, as a worried resident of Corby. And that's an important issue here. You talked about consultation, and the Cabinet quite rightly raised about allocation, the consultation that they did on the budget, and then they said nobody turned up for their consultation in Corby. Well, we know why now. We know why, because you don't listen. That's why nobody will come to your consultations. They think it's a waste of time. You've got to prove yourselves that you will listen to a consultation. What you did in Corby was 5,000 signatures to say this is wrong. 1,000 people were answering. And what you did is you put a sticking plaster on it. What you did is you tried to hoodwink the people of Corby by saying, we won't take that away now. We won't take it away. That is not true. That can be removed a day after this decision, or it can be moved up to 2 years. The cynical person that I am, it'll be moved within months, if not within a year, from Corby's fire station. The biggest growing town in the county, in England, the biggest growing town. We'll have businesses suffering, we'll have people suffering, and we'll put our firefighters at risk. That's not acceptable. This is a wrong decision. It should be took out, and that should be kept there with full-time firefighters. I respect that you're going to replace them with retained firefighters. Retained firefighters take longer to turn out. I appreciate what they do. I really honestly appreciate what they do. But they take longer to turn out. We are putting people's lives at risk. The difficulty I've got, that this is not just Corby, this affects East Northants. Of course it does. It affects all the villages around that area. There's a huge effect on that. And if we look at the future of the fire service, 7 and 18 cuts, we will see closures. Because the fire... Thank you, sir. The fire chief himself has said there's nowhere else to go. The future of these cuts, we will see closure in places like Rowan, South Northants and others. That's the only place left to go. Because we can't take any more frontline staff off. I did at scrutiny, Chair, ask for the figures on the wages of senior staff. We have 4 very senior staff on terrific wages that could help pay for 2 years for that appliance to be in Corby. We should re-look at this before next week.
Thanks, John. And Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you guys for what you do to protect people of Northamptonshire. Much appreciated, especially by me. There I am. You can see my photo there. I'm very proud to be on that committee. Very proud indeed. The cuts to these services is going to be astronomical to the service. For firefighters to be able to turn up, instead of 6 minutes to 12 minutes, people's lives are going to be put at risk. Houses are going to be burnt down. Terrible thing. I urge you, as administration, to reverse this. You've cut the fire service every year. Every year there's been clawing out money from them. Every year they're having to manage on less. We've got a fire service which I know people who are in Northamptonshire are proud. They're proud to have this fire service, but we're one of the best in the country. Under the guise of Dawn Whittaker and Martin, our Chief Fire Officer, it's grown from strength to strength. But it can't grow any more if you keep cutting the services. Andre, you must take some of the share of this blame. I spoke to you...
Can you address through the chairman?
Through the chair. The portfolio holder must take some of the blame. I spoke to him on very many occasions and said he must fight to stop the cuts in the fire service. It's fallen on deaf ears. Andre, I say to you through the chair, rethink your position. I don't think you'll be able to carry on in your tender while you're not supporting the fire brigade. So I say to you, the administration, no more cuts to the fire service. Protect our lads up there. Protect all the people in the fire service. I certainly appreciate it, and I know the general public of Northamptonshire appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gonzalez de Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome the support and comments, obviously, from those members who haven't spoken today, because I'm sure that that's quite an indication of the areas that we understand and feel that quite clearly we appreciate the complexity of the budgetary areas and also the pressures that they are all experiencing. What I would indicate quite clearly to Councillor John McGee, and I will take no script from him in the slightest, is that when we took over as administration here in 2005, the Labour plan was to close fire stations. This was a plan that they had on a failing service. The service was in special measures since 2004 under a Labour administration. He was part of that administration, and it disgusting to actually hear that he says at the end of the day that we are taking money out of the service here and worsening the service. This service has gone from a very bad service in special measures to an excellent service, and working very hard to retain that opportunity for the future. We must look at innovation, we must look at new ways of operating. If we stay as we are, we'll fall over, and status quo is not an option. The money is not there, and as Councillor McGee understands, it is not there. I've met with him many times to explain that. Corby Borough Council does not support the fire and rescue service at all, and it's quite indicating at the end of the day when I've attended 2 separate meetings there that they wouldn't come through with any fiscal support or any even intrinsic support, shall we say, for them, not the slightest support. A question was asked there of Corby residents at the end of the day. Did they listen? They do listen. They do listen and support. I was there on many events. I have to say it's disappointing that the MP for Corby does not listen and does not support, does not even attend a public consultation event in his own town. Very shocking indeed, and very hurtful at the end of the day to those firefighters who came out, and I was with them on very cold evenings at the end of the day to be there, present, and answer any questions that were posed in any way whatsoever. We're very proud of our fire and rescue service, very proud of our firefighters, and therefore will establish what we possibly can within the remit of the budgetary constraints that we have. It's not an open-ended opportunity. We cannot find money at the end of the day where there isn't money, and we know we have to balance the issues in terms of child protection in the county together with obviously adult social care. These are very important areas, together with obviously the retraction in terms of the area from central government for the money that obviously coming through. As the Labour administration in central government bankrupted this country. We would not be in this position otherwise. Mr Chairman, I appreciate the comments that have been made in terms of Councillor Meredith as well. I understand obviously he's a very supporting member of the IRMP committee, and therefore we have obviously many ways of working through the models for the future. There are interim plans here that we have obviously in place to ensure that we have proper fire cover, and obviously we'll invest in our communities as much as possible. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
You agree with the report? Thank you. Item 12, Councillor Parker, cleaning.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And this is hopefully a fairly straightforward report. It's basically looking to commence the re-procurement of the corporate cleaning contract for a period of 2 years. You'll see that within the discussion, it's talking about that it's unlikely that a small or medium-sized business would actually be able to take the contract on, which is valued at about £720,000 per year, and currently employs 73 people within the county council. So the proposal is to keep within the existing contract. So the proposal is to actually procure another contract, as I say, commencing in August, and take it forward until March 2017. So move the report, Chairman.
Councillor Locks.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Parker says, on the face of it, this is quite a straightforward report. However, it does pose one or two questions. The first is, back in January 2014, we knew about Project Angel, we knew about the asset exploitation programme, so why on earth did we let a contract that wasn't suitable? Second question is, are there any early termination penalties involved in ending this contract? And the third is, what's going to be the cost of re-tendering? If we'd done it right first last January, we wouldn't be facing these additional tendering costs. And as we heard this morning, as the council moves forward, we're putting ourselves out as being an excellent commissioning organisation. If this is an example of effective commissioning, all I can say is we're doomed.
Thank you. Councillor Parker.
Far silly thing for me to say it'd be a straightforward report, but Councillor Loft, this is a common sense way of moving forward. It's taking it forward, as you quite rightly identified, to 2017, when in fact the Project Angel will come into force, or the new building offices will come into force, and therefore we'll have to review the whole situation there. But it's a sensible way of taking the things forward, and I see no problem with it. So I move the report, Chairman.
Thank you. Agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 13, dormant, not doomed. Dormant trusts. Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very interesting report because those who have read through it and probably looked at the indices, the appendices, will actually see that there's about £84,000 that's locked up in various trust funds, some of which haven't been used since the 1960s. And it's right and proper that we look at these now, but in fact what we do is we put it out to the Northamptonshire Community Foundation, because they have the skill and expertise to actually take this forward. They can unlock any dormant or ineffective trust funds within the UK. They can put these into an endowment fund, and then that can be used as a grant-making charity. Or, of course, alternatively, they can go back to some of these organisations which may still have the trustees in place, or new trustees in place, who could take them forward and maybe use them again for what they were originally intended for. Again, what will be happening is that the NCF will actually be looking further into the county's situation to see whether there are any other funds that they need to explore and take forward in a similar manner. So, happy to move the report, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Good afternoon. Yes, I actually support this. Now, as a professional advisor in this particular area, there are some issues that do concern me, and whilst getting the right people to look after the funds, I thoroughly support, and it's sort of cleaning up the situation. However, a couple of things. What I do really like about this is, unlike the previous Labour government, who were going to look at dormant accounts in banks and building societies and actually spend the money themselves, we're actually going to get the experts to look after it. However, if I was to sit down with one of my clients with £100,000 and actually say, I'm going to charge you £5,000 and 1.5% a year to manage it, I wouldn't get the business. The costs are too high. If they're getting a windfall of £80,000, possibly £120,000, we need actually to reduce these costs. It's money that's already in a charity, and some small fee, yes, but not this amount of money. So can we please go back to them and actually say we want less taken out? It's the charity of the schools. The money's already been in there for many years. It's a windfall for you. You already have costs. Absorb some of those costs. Thank you.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, and Councillor Brown is quite right. I mean, first of all, I appreciate his support for the main part of the report. But of course, as it says within the report, we don't have the expertise or the time within the County Council to carry out this ourselves, and therefore it's necessary to bring in an outside body. Now, with regards to the amount of funding, amount of money that they're charging, yes, I will ask officers to revisit that. But I think whichever organisation takes this on, they will expect to get some reward for their efforts. Yes, I can certainly ask people to look at it again and see if we can reduce it. But in the main, I think the report stands as it is, Chairman.
Agree the report? Agreed. Thank you. Item 14, asbestos removal. Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is a new contract that we're looking to award. Clearly, asbestos is an ongoing concern in all areas, particularly where, like the County Council, we have a lot of older buildings where asbestos used to be used quite frequently. So it's a sensible thing to bring forward. I would indicate one slight error within the report, and that's on page 51 in 6.2. It talks about the current year and has 2012-13. Of course, that should be 2013-14, and the subsequent years of 15-16, 16-17, and then 17-18. But with that change to the report, Chairman, and by the way, this would look to go in June, I move the report.
Councillor Brookfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Parker is absolutely right that the removal of asbestos and the management of asbestos in our public buildings is a very serious issue. And a couple of things struck me in the report, and it's on page 51 in the box, about the benefits that this might bring in the setting up of the moving of the asbestos consultancy framework to LGSS. I'd just really like to know what the cost was of setting up the asbestos consultancy framework back in 2014, and what the actual cost is of moving it to LGSS. And was there a financial comparison made between the bulk procurement and actually having the management costs within the County Council? And if this is to be, I just wonder if this is going to be self-financing. And also, what will be the impact in terms of risk on our schools and care homes, and will some of the costs of asbestos removal fall on them? And there are many variables in this, and it's acknowledged in 6.2 that it's difficult to give exact expenditure from year to year. So is there some recognition of the financial and the legal risk? Has there been some allowance made for that? Because as we know, there are still legal cases taking place. And really, we just really, in the opposition, wanted to know more detail around the business case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to confess I can't answer the question on the cost question that Councillor Brookfield asked. I will get back to her, and I will get back with some more facts on the business case. So I move the report.
Agree the report? Thank you. I think you said agree, did you? Speak up. Item 15, Treasury Management Report. Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the Treasury Management Report for Quarter 3. And again, it highlights how the Treasury Management team are doing when compared with the various benchmarks that we have to measure ourselves against. It's a very good report. As I always say with these reports, it indicates exactly how well we're doing financially with the money that we have in hand. And I'm happy to move it, Chairman.
Agree the report? Come on, then.
Thank you. Sorry for that, councillors. Item 13.2. Could I be advised on what the cost that KPMG actually charged us to find the 5.1 million and 1.3 million? Whilst I understand that the MRP work has been carried out over several years, can I stress that, and I know the formula is extremely complicated and everybody has got a different permutation, that now we have the permutation. If there are any changes to the complexity of the calculations, it's important that we show the transparency that any changes are actually given to us so that, we don't go further down the line of actually creative accounting, and that's not what we actually want as a council. So, sorry about that, Mr. Chairman, but thank you for the time.
No, fine. Councillor Parker.
The answer is yes, and I'll move the report.
Okay. Do you agree this report?
Did you get that, Matt? Good lad.
Item 16, Monthly Financial Report. Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, it's a good report. It indicates what's happening within the council as we speak, and of course it does indicate in 551 that in fact we are now have a nil variance reported, and of course that goes back to the work that's been undertaken between finance officers and the outside bodies, where we've been talking about the MRP, and it's brought us to a situation. Of course, the problem with the MRP, as I discussed at the last Cabinet meeting, was really that was due to, in fact, we were being over-prudent with the amount of money that we were setting aside, and it's only because of the result of the work that's been undertaken that, of course, we've now recognised that, and we're able to put the money back into the actually into the coffers, if you so to speak. So, and you'll see in 11.1 that in fact the £6.868 million has now gone back into the report, and that's why we now have a zero deficit. So happy to move the report, Chairman.
Agree the report? Thank you. Item 17, the Capital Report. Councillor Parker.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Yes, the capital report for the month of ending of November, which is period 8, you'll see within the report that we are asked to, Cabinet are asked to approve the 4 schemes that are in on page 5, 3 of which, of course, are to do with schools, either building new schools or improving current schools. And I think this again helps to reflect just how well the County Council is doing to keep pace with the amount of schools that we need to build in Northamptonshire, as it's ever increasing in size and numbers. So, well, it's not increasing in size, but certainly in terms of numbers. So I'm happy to move the report, Chairman.
Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to note, colleague Councillor Parker's comments around schools. This is a huge commitment in terms of the capital programme, and does recognise how we are dealing with this, which is a big challenge, but we are dealing with it very well, I would think. And I'd just like to mention our Race to the Top programme that you mentioned earlier, and our need to provide all the new schools, but moreover the need to provide those good and outstanding schools, and a big strand of the push for the race to the top is to do that. And we've had meetings this week with DfE officials to make sure we are doing everything we can to bring the best new academy sponsors to Northamptonshire. But just to agree and note, there's some excellent commitment here.
Thank you. Councillor Parker, anything to add?
No, just move the report, Chairman.
Move the report. Thank you. Item 18, the Wellbeing Community Organisation. Councillor Brown.
Chairman, first of all, I'll apologise to you for actually not ensuring that this paper came to you early enough to be included in the agenda as it was set out over a week ago. This was caused by the fact that there was some clarity required about two of the items which have now been resolved. The purpose of the report today before you and my colleagues is to establish the first of the building blocks in terms of the new way that some of our services are going to need to be delivered. I've been very fortunate. I've been a member of the Cabinet from the time when we became the administration in 2005. And I do recall at that time we had a very simple understanding of where we needed to go. And it was to be smaller and more enabling. And at that time we had a Cabinet and we had a Council that we could not afford. And today our words have been found to be very true, because if you look at the money that we've had to cut from our spending, that has actually been far more than we ever anticipated. And during that journey, we've actually changed fundamentally the way that services have been delivered. And one of those changes was about discovering the benefits of making sure that we were helping you to help yourself, by making certain that we actually had some services available that were there to help the most vulnerable when they needed that help. And finally, to become a trusted advocate. Those changes in the way that we've created the service delivery within this council now need to move on to another stage. They need to move on to a stage whereby we're engaging with partners quite differently to the way that we've worked in the past. And some of the traditional ways of working have been hidebound by the bureaucracy of our individual partners. And the purpose of a wellbeing community organisation is to ensure that we can deliver a county-wide strategic improvement to the well-being of our population, and at the same time focus on delivery which is locality-based. And to do that, we need to work with some of the best partners across the county, and we need to engage with the NHS in a way where we can cause them to also work differently. The benefits of developing this particular organisation will be twofold. And I do accept that we are starting a series of discussions which will result in a number of papers coming to Cabinet where the business models as they are developed will have to be approved by my colleagues. And some of you may be very surprised at how I have supported the fact that we have got a very negative report within the body of the report. The negativeness of the next generation of the communications that have been taking place about our council plans. The issue about democratic accountability and how we're going to deal with that. The issues about commissioning ability and how we will actually deal with that. And this is required to be demonstrated now so that all of our partners understand that these are essential elements that must be resolved. Because if we're going to do something differently, not only have we got to be committed, but we've got to be able to turn this in a way that means that people will actually back us on all of the steps of the journey. But we have to start somewhere. And starting somewhere is starting these discussions with these partners. And I look forward to your support in the development of this. And I know in the lengthy discussions that I've had with the Director for Public Health, and also with my colleague Suresh Patel, who's responsible for the adult social services, the ultimate integration of some of our prevention services will need to take place in a way which ensures that we can focus better and make sure that the support that we can give is done in a way that encompasses the majority of people at various different levels. So this is the starter. This is the start of a 10. There's a lot of work that's going to go on from this, and I'm confident that this is a really strong base from which to work.
Councillor Patel, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to support these papers, and Councillor Brown has outlined the commitment to work together on this, so thank you.
Thank you. I've got 4 speakers, Councillor Collier, Eales, Butcher and Stone. Councillor Collier. John as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mentioned earlier my concerns over the process by which you were introducing the Next Generation Northamptonshire plans. With them, the detailed proposals only being published at 10:30 this morning and then full council being asked to approve them next week. But then I was even more shocked last Friday, out of the blue, to receive this extra agenda item, which is basically beginning the implementation of this plan, which has not yet been approved by full council. This proposal is clearly contrary to the current adopted policy framework of the council, and therefore normally only full council would be allowed to make this decision. But you're introducing it under the special urgency rule, which means that there's no opportunity for call-in, and it means it gives the Cabinet the power to make this decision because it's incredibly urgent. So why is it incredibly urgent? Well, there are 2 parts of it, recommendations 4 and 5, which concern the implementation of the interim contracts to replace the contracts which expire at the end of March. I can understand why that is incredibly urgent after the incredible collapse of the wellbeing tender at the end of last year, of which there seems to have been remarkably little comment. A sudden about turn, and we're jumping into this now as the way forward. So recommendations 4 and 5 after that unceremonial collapse probably are urgent. But what about recommendation 6? Recommendation 6 on here talks about giving the Director of Public Health and Wellbeing and the Section 151 officer the authority to novate or assign these contracts to these new community wellbeing organisations or organisation which will be part of that plan which hasn't yet been adopted by the Council. To me, this is of questionable legality, never mind whether it's the right thing to do or not. Councillor Loftus and I consulted the monitoring officer before this meeting, and he believes it is in accordance with the Constitution. I frankly don't believe certainly that recommendation 6 is, but whether it's in accordance with the Constitution or not, it's shabby practice, it's an abuse of the democratic process, and you ought to be ashamed of it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eales.
Thank you, Chairman. The Labour Group are deeply concerned about this proposal, and we feel that this wellbeing community organisation proposal is being rushed through, and certainly the fact that you've utilised the special urgency rule would demonstrate that. I'm given to understand that the budget scrutiny working session where the Chief Executive came along and spoke to councillors and talked them through the next generation model, requested more information and a proper consultation to be undertaken with local people before any decision on the council plan. So we feel a proper business case needs to be drawn up. We feel this decision preempts the full council decision on the council plan, and we would ask you to withdraw it today. And if we can't call it in, then what we will do as the Labour Group is request a special council meeting to debate it properly. Thank you.
Councillor Butcher.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm going to make a quote, as somebody said earlier, that I was shocked, actually, to see this document this morning when I arrived at County Hall. We have been discussing all day about the importance of scrutiny and making sure that in a democratic way we make decisions. We are making decisions here through skin and bone. This is not a case of whether to fill a pothole or whatever. This is about people's future and how we provide the services that we need in Northamptonshire to make sure that the people that need us, we provide the services properly. This documentation, to me, is just cutting through everything to say this is the way we've got to do. If you look at section 4 and read it carefully, it says that we're going to nearly hand over £4 million to an organisation to use as they wish, where the county will have no say on where that money goes or monitor it. I am asking this council today, this cabinet, to take this back, put it through scrutiny properly. We have a good scrutiny in County Council, and to make sure it's done an open, clear and democratic process. Chair, you always say you like everything to be democratic. Let's make sure this is, because this is not a democratic process. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chair. Like my colleagues, I too am really shocked to find this on today's agenda, and I'm shocked because we went through a process at the Budget Scrutiny Group where we had a first look at the new generation proposals, and it was our agreement, cross-party, that we needed a lot more information, and I, for one, I'm not at all happy with being presented with a model of taking something into a new structure, a community interest group, without having had all the options presented to me with a proper sound business case. I think it's a really shoddy kind of practice, and we know very well that in terms of people's health and well-being, we need to operate as close to the people and to the communities as possible. We must not put more barriers and more obstacles in the way. We are their elected representatives, and we need to be able to build trust in our communities in the services that we are offering. This is not the way to do it. If there is an emergency, I want to know what it is. What is the emergency that has made people present this as the agenda item today? You haven't been clear with us about what that is. And I would urge you to please take this back and give us time for a lot more work to be done on these issues. Thank you.
Councillor McGee.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not so much shocked at this. I'm just extremely disappointed. Regardless of our political differences, Chair, I've always found you to be open and honest and democratic. To allow this paper to come at such short notice that changes a direction for this council, it's not open, honest or democratic. It's far from it. We had a scrutiny meeting that said there was still a lot of questions on the new model forward. There's no big business plan. Backbench councillors, I like to call them frontline councillors because that's what they are, haven't had any input whatsoever for this big change in direction. There's got to be a lot more input before this goes forward. I, for one, actually believe that without joint commissioning, we are in trouble in the future. This is just not joint commissioning, this is a whole different direction. It's towards joint commissioning, and it should be. I'm cynical on the way forward like this because we will start off with the good intentions of community interest companies, social enterprises, and then your whole ethos of the way forward will start privatising things when they're going well or they're wiping their feet, etc. That's a longer term. I've no doubt that will happen, and we'll be turning up once every 3 or 4 months and saying, oh, what a great job we as commissioners are doing. But, you are an open and honest democratic person, Chair, so let's take a step back with this. Let's have an opportunity to debate it properly. We don't want to be calling extra council meetings because that's a waste of time for officers and every councillor. But this is so important that if we have to do that, we will do it.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened to the points that have been made, and I don't agree with them. First and foremost, this is a start of a process. It's a start of a process which will result in many different proposals being put before Cabinet, and also will be the start of the debates and the discussions about how we will fundamentally deliver some of these services in a different way. I think one of the things that we've got to recognise is that we can't wait and talk through everything to the nth degree. If we're going to work with partners, we've got to work with partners in an open way, and to be able to work in an open way, we need to be able to have Cabinet's approval for these discussions to start. That's why this is here today. It also is very important that the changes to the contracts which are being proposed do take place, and take place legally through the process which this allows, and in consequence I believe that that is the right way forward. It's sad that we're being threatened with costly intervention, but if that is to be the case, then obviously it will be labelled as an expensive way of effectively making an opposition point. And in truth, what we are doing is starting a process which together we will all have an involvement in. And in particular, as this progresses, there will be continuing involvement with scrutiny. So, without further ado, I move the paper.
Agree report? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the Cabinet for today. Thank you for your attendance. Next Cabinet will be Tuesday the 10th of March. Thank you.